stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Oh, Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Norfolk County Council and Committee meeting for April 2nd, 2019. I'd like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. And for those in attendance, if you could silence your communication devices, it would be appreciated. Just to note that Councillor Huffman is absent with regrets. And we are lucky to have Bill Jackson again today as our camera volunteer. And thank you very much for being here with us, Bill, again. Appreciate it. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? None noted, Madam Clerk. Approval of agenda changes to the agenda. There are 5 proposed changes to today's agenda. And the first one I'll announce is the removal of the following item, the presentation by John Mascarin, the Integrity Commissioner, which was to appear before us between 4:30 and 5:30 on conflict of interest training. Mr. Mascarin will not be with us today. There's the addition of the following items, a deputation by Russell Colebrook regarding backyard chickens. And just to note that with respect to report DCS 19-49, there's a change because of the deputation from 5E to 5F. Okay, if you can just note that. So really we'll have all the deputations on backyard chickens, backyard hens, or whatever we want to call them, before we deal with the report, okay? We have Brenda Thompson from the Animal Welfare Enforcement in Norfolk County. She'll be speaking on that subject as a deputation. And staff reports, there are discussion items, a Public Works memo, which is attached in the buff-colored document here that was added today regarding the Long Point Causeway project status. And then a closed session verbal update at the request of Mayor Chop, information related to the interim chief administrative officer. We'll be dealing with that in the closed session. Are there any other proposed changes? Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move 10 Alpha, which was the closed session report from the staff report CAO 19-15, that was 10A, to the spot where John Mascarin would have been, as well as my own, only in the interest because the deputations won't be able to start until 6 p.m. So that way we can at least get moving along.
10.
So it'll be 10A as well as my closed session item will be coming in after 4 Alpha.
After 4?
Yeah. Just only because we've got
okay,
the,
so we just moved the closed session report up to
closed session reports
where Mr.
up.
Mascarin was supposed
Exactly. To be. Just so we
can
don't have to wait, otherwise we'll just be waiting.
That will work. And I saw another hand up. Councilor Michelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add to the list of deputations we have a deputation from Mr. David Rusnak. He has appeared before us before, but he has requested that he come before us again with what he considers to be significantly new information on his chosen topic. Thank you.
And what is the subject, sir?
It's the railway line in Delhi.
Okay. I know we've dealt with that a couple times before, but so we'll add that we'll add that as a deputation then. Have that, Madam Clerk? Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Madam Mayor, And Councilor Rabbits? Mover and seconder, those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, we'll move to the meat of the meeting here. And we do have our first presentation here. There are no consent items, so we'll move to the first presentation, and it is our planning staff are all seated at the front here. Welcome, everybody, and I'm going to pass the floor to Pamela Dusling to start us off. This will be a 1.5 hour presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and Council. We thank you for this opportunity as the planning team in Norfolk County to provide some development training, or what we call a primer on planning. We take this opportunity with every new council to provide information about the development process, specifically what applications will come before you and the background on each of those. It's really a time for us to answer your questions on planning processes and get to know each other a little bit more. So please take opportunity this next...
Do you want questions through the presentation, or do you want them saved?
Very good question. We're going to chunk the presentation into about 7 sections, and after each section there'll be an opportunity for that section to have Q&A. When you see me pop up to the podium, we're all going to take a chance to talk. When you see me pop up to the podium, I'm kind of like the bell that's going to be the time is up and we need to move along, just so we keep things moving along tonight. So we hope that will help you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. If you do have specific questions on properties or specific policy, we have our contract planner, Neil Stoop, who's over at the side there, and he's going to be recording any specific questions. We may not be able to answer them specifically tonight, but we can get you the information back via email to all of council. I'll take a minute to introduce our planning staff. There we go. I'm going to be doing the introduction and the overview of the development primer on planning. We'll have Kayla DeLay, who is our senior planner out of the Simcoe office. She'll be talking about Committee of Adjustment. She oversees our Committee of Adjustment this 2019 and 2020 year. Then we'll have Senior Planner Alicia Cull out of our Simcoe office talking about pre-consultation meetings, official plans, zoning bylaw, and hazard lands. We'll have Planner Stephen Collier, who is in our Langton office, talking about deeming bylaws and part lot control. Shannon Van Dalen, who is a principal planner out of our Simcoe office, will be talking about our site plan control process. And then Matt Vaughn, who is a principal planner out of our Langton office, will be talking about subdivisions and condos. And then finally, we have our friends from the province, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, David Stubbs and Eric Boyd over to my right, and they will be giving a provincial overview at the end of the presentation. So again, after each section, it'll be about 10 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A after each section. So I'll jump right in. To begin, it's very important to identify that it's the main role of a municipal planner is to introduce policy. I have a slogan that says good policy equals great development. And we also review development applications, which you're very familiar, and you see us every other week at council meetings and public meetings. It's important to note that planners make recommendations based on policy, and you as council make the decisions. Municipal planners are not advocates for specific developments, but we do provide professional recommendations based, again, on policy, ethics, and the best interest of the community. Our planning staff also is a liaison for our Norfolk Environmental Advisory Committee, our Committee of Adjustment, and our Planning Advisory Committee. We also provide technical resources for our Heritage Committee, our Accessibility Advisory Committee, our Agricultural Advisory Board, and our Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board. So we are very busy at a number of public meetings and sessions throughout the year. Myself, along with 4 of our planners, are registered professional planners, and our younger planners, Neil and Stephen, are members of OPPI as well, but they are working towards their professional designations. So OPPI is the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, and they represent over 3,500 professional planners in Ontario and 500 student members. And the members work for government, private industry, community agencies, academic institutions, and a variety of specific and across the province roles. OPPI is the Ontario affiliate for the Canadian Institute of Planners, and if Council is interested in the full text and the Code of Conduct and Practice, it is available on the OPPI website. OPPI members have a primary responsibility to define and serve the interest of the public good. And ethically, as RPPs, we take a look at the responsibility of public interest, the responsibility to client and employers, and the responsibility to profession and other members, which are professions. And we are all very active in the OPPI organization and fulfill our obligation as RPPs very appropriately. To take a look top-down at our planning policy, there are a number of key documents that professional planners are required to adhere to in a variety of fashions. So the Planning Act in Ontario is the primary legislation. The Planning Act outlines items including provincial interest, policy statements, manners in which local planning is permitted to be administered, official plan requirements, community improvement requirements, land use controls, related administration, subdivision of land and regulations for specific processes such as the official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments. It outlines minor variances, and it outlines the way in which notices are circulated, timing, circulation distances, notifications. All of that is regulated within the Planning Act. Municipalities are required to have regard to this item, and it's listed to be, again, in the provincial interest. The Act also enables the issuance of policy statements. So the Provincial Policy Statement of 2014 was issued under Section 3 of the Planning Act, and it came into effect in April 30th, 2014, and it replaced the Provincial Policy Statement of March 1st, 2005. The PPS provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest that's related to land use, planning, and development. And the PPS is scheduled to be updated again in 2024. The official plan in Norfolk County is a statement of our goals, objectives, and policies intended to guide existing and future land use, physical development, and growth within the municipal boundaries. The policies of the plan are designated to provide essential tools to enhance future growth, development, and a chance for the county to create the community envisioned by the Norfolk County residents. Our original OP was approved by Council in 2006 and then approved by the province in 2008. As Council is also well aware, our most recent official plan review was updated and approved by the province in 2018. And this OP is deemed to be consistent with both the provincial policy statement and the official plan. And we are required to update that every 5 years according to the Planning Act. So again, that would be in 2023. And the Norfolk County official plan is available online. If any councillors would like a copy of the official plan in hard copy, we can definitely get that to you, but we do advise that the online document is the best because it is regularly updated and current. Then we have our Norfolk County zoning bylaw. So our Norfolk County zoning bylaw is a comprehensive document that was approved in 2014. Previous to that, we had 4 former zoning bylaws that included the town of Simcoe, the township of Norfolk, the city of Nanticoke, and the township of Delhi. And they were all amalgamated in 2014 in our comprehensive zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw is a regulatory document that implements the Norfolk County official plan, and it identifies specific zones, so setbacks, parking provisions, definitions, site-specific provisions. And the Norfolk County zoning bylaw, again, is available online. There are also a number of other relevant documents that as planners we require to reference and be mindful of in the evaluation of planning applications. These include the Source Water Protection Plan, the MDS calculations, otherwise known as the Minimum Distance Separation Document, and that's in relation to the establishment of barns and sensitive land uses. The MOCC also has guidelines in regards to distances from industrial uses, and that's known as the D6 guidelines. And most recently, OMAFRA has created the guidelines for permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural lands, which here in Norfolk County we find extremely useful. So there are various types of planning applications, and we're going to get into some more specifics of each. These applications, council will see from time to time, and others they will not. Our public meetings include official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, subdivisions, and condos. So those are the applications that will be in front of this council. Our counseling committee, they look at applications for part lot control, policy, long-range planning reports, and also our deeming applications come to council and committee. We have delegated approval authority for site plan control, red line revisions, and condominium exemptions. So those are delegated to staff, planning staff. And then finally, our consents and variances, they go forward to our committee of adjustment. So that wraps up the general introduction of what planning is and how it happens here in Norfolk County. At this time, I'd like to ask if council has any questions on the general introduction and planning.
Questions to Ms. Disley? Don't see any hands up. Pam? Yes, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on a red line approval for me.
Absolutely. Through the chair, red line approvals are done for applications that are previously approved. Typically, we see those in the form of site plan control or subdivisions, and they're minor revisions. So under the Planning Act, we are allowed to make minor revisions, and that's what a red line is. We do that in-house.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, I don't know who you've got on deck.
Okay, with any further ado, I'll introduce Kayla Rell, and she's going to be talking about Committee of Adjustment.
Welcome, Kayla.
Thank you. So Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body, and they make decisions in related to consents and minor variances. So Norfolk County has appointed a Committee of Adjustment, and it is comprised of 7 members, including the chair. So the Committee of Adjustment meets here in the council chambers on the 3rd Wednesday evening of each month at 5 o'clock. And the Committee of Adjustment is the same term as council, so it follows the 4-year term. We do have Committee of Adjustment staff in planning, so myself as the senior planner, we have a secretary treasurer for the committee, and then we have 2 planners who work on the Committee of Adjustment, primarily meeting with applicants, taking in applications, and presenting the reports to the committee. From the time a complete application is submitted for the Committee of Adjustment to the time a decision is made, it's approximately 2 months, so it's a fairly quick turnaround time. And all Committee of Adjustment meetings are open to the public, and the notices are provided to neighboring property owners for consents and minor variance applications. In a typical year, Norfolk County would process about 100 Committee of Adjustment applications. So under the Planning Act, the committee is authorized to make decisions in related to consent applications. So you'll commonly hear us refer to them as severances, and essentially what you're doing is creating a separate conveyable parcel of land. So the creation of a new lot is typically the most common consent application, but you will also see boundary adjustment applications where you're taking a sliver of land and boundary adjusting it to an abutting property, or you'll also see consents for easements and rights of way. All consent applications are subject to conditions, and these conditions do need to be met within a 1-year time frame or the application will lapse. And just like any public meeting, there is an appeal process, so within 20 days of the decision, a decision of the committee can be appealed as well. So the second type of application is minor variances. And these are variances from our zoning bylaw, minor variances from the zoning. So an example of minor variances could include relief for a building height or a building area
or, for instance, a parking provision. And under the Planning Act, there are 4 tests of a minor variance that need to be met. So these 4 tests are: is the application minor in nature? Is it appropriate development given the context of the neighborhood? Does it meet the intent of the official plan? And does it meet the intent of the zoning bylaw? So planning staff review all minor variances under these 4 tests and make our recommendation. Just like consents, there is a 20-day appeal process for any minor variance applications.
Okay, ready for questions? Questions to Ms. DeLay? Don't see any hands up.
Okay, I'll turn
Thank
it
you.
over to Alicia.
Thank you. So
Welcome,
I'm going to
Alicia.
talk, thanks.
Go ahead.
I'm going to speak first about pre-consultation meetings. So pre-consultation meetings are held in advance of the submission of large applications, generally official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments, draft plans of subdivision, condominiums, and site plans. Most straightforward applications involve an informal meeting or an informal pre-consultation meeting with the planner. Formal pre-consultation meetings have been taking place since around 2010. The fee is $250 and is credited against any planning applications that are submitted. So if an applicant does move forward with an application, it's essentially free. I chair the meetings and a staff member from relevant departments attend to provide comments. And comments are based on the information that we receive and compiled into a formal list and distributed to the proponent within about a week. These comments are valid for 1 year and are confidential until a planning application is submitted. Pre-consultations are a great opportunity and a useful tool for developers. The purpose of pre-consultation meetings is to outline what is required for a complete application and to help guide proponents through the development process. Potential issues can be worked out in advance of the submission, and realistic expectations of the requirements can be established. Meetings take place on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday afternoons of each month, with 3 time slots available on each day, and the dates are often full. A list of requirements to book a pre-consultation meeting is available on the Planning Department website. Next, I'm going to speak about official plans and official plan amendments. So the official plan is an overarching policy document which sets out the long-term vision for the growth and development of the county. It's implemented through the zoning bylaw, and all planning applications must be in conformity with the official plan. The plans are reviewed and updated every 5 years. Amendments to the official plan are required on occasion, and these are for projects that do not conform to the specific policies of the official plan. They generally result in an entirely different land use. So for example, a change from a commercial designation to urban residential designation, or adding a major new use to an existing designation. Official plan amendments must be consistent with the provincial policy statement. These applications are circulated to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for comments, and they are subject to a public process, which means anyone with an interest in the development can provide comments and has the opportunity to appeal. In Norfolk County, an official plan amendment takes approximately 3 to 6 months from the submission of a complete application to a decision, but this can be shorter or longer depending on the complexity of the application and whether any issues arise during the review. So in 2018, there were 13 official plan amendments recorded by Norfolk County. 4 were county-initiated projects, 2 were software errors, and this results in 7 publicly initiated official plan amendments last year. As per the Planning Act, the county has 210 days or 7 months to adopt an official plan amendment before an appeal can be lodged for a non-decision. Next up is zoning bylaws and amendments. The zoning bylaw is a legally enforceable regulatory document which implements the vision of the official plan. It outlines what uses are permitted and where. So for example, where an area of the county is designated urban residential, in the official plan, it can have a variety of residential zones within that area that each allow a different type and density of housing. Setbacks, heights, parking, and other site-specific details are implemented through the zoning as well as the permitted uses. Zoning bylaw amendments can be submitted alone or as part of a combined official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, or can be submitted in conjunction with other planning applications. Zoning bylaw amendments take into consideration surrounding land uses and compatibility, conformity with the official plan, and consistency with the provincial policy statement. The zoning bylaw amendment process is public, like official plan amendments. Some applications are considered down zonings, which are cheaper and simpler than regular amendments. In Norfolk County, a zoning bylaw amendment generally takes approximately 2 to 6 months from the submission of a complete application to a decision, but this can be shorter or longer depending on the complexity. As per the Planning Act, the county has 150 days or 5 months to make a decision on a zoning bylaw amendment, or 210 days if it's combined with an official plan amendment, and after that time, the applicant has the opportunity to appeal for a non-decision. The county processed 63 zoning bylaw amendments in 2018. Several of these are surplus farm dwelling severance rezonings, which increases the total for the year. Planning staff do not present to council for surplus farm dwelling severance rezonings. Official plan and zoning bylaw amendment reports require extensive policy analysis and explanation, as all of this information is needed in writing in case of an LPAT appeal. So here is an example just for council's information. So everything that's shown on the map in yellow is designated as urban residential in the official plan. And you'll see outlined in black, there's several areas that are marked with notations such as R1B, R2, R4. These are all different residential zones within that designation. And this is from our GIS tool, which is available for council to view any property, and it's available on our website. Lastly, I'm talking about hazard lands. So the hazard land zoning comes from the Conservation Authority and is generally located in areas that are unstable or at risk of flooding. The following uses are permitted in the hazard land zone: dock, pier, or wharf, farm, excluding any building, parking lot, or any similar non-structural use accessory to a permitted use or accessory to a permitted use in an adjacent zone but on the same lot, or a public park, provided there are no buildings located thereon except buildings used as an open pavilion and for sanitary facilities or change houses for bathers. Hazard lands can be amended in specific circumstances. Generally, planning staff looks for support from the Conservation Authority because the hazard land mapping does come from them. There may be certain circumstances where hazard land amendments can be supported, such as where a slope stability study shows that it is acceptable to do so. And here are just some other mapping examples of hazard lands. So you'll tend to see them on the left map along the lakeshore, and then on the right, that's along Big Creek. So it's generally in an area along the lake tends to be because of flooding, and along the river can be flooding or erosion. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Madam Mayor?
A couple questions. So just first one with the hazard lands. I've seen a number of applications come forward for homes and so on going on hazard lands. So what's the criteria that you guys use when, for one project to be okay on a hazard land and another not? And I don't think it's just the slope stability study.
Yeah, generally it would be if the Conservation Authority is supportive of it, then we tend to support it as well because they are the experts with regard to hazard lands. But there can be other studies such as slope stability studies, so every situation is kind of unique.
But generally, if Long Point's in support,
Generally, then yes, we would support it.
Okay. And then the next one, I'm just wondering, when I looked at the numbers, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, in terms of the number of official plan amendments that Norfolk County has in comparison to other neighboring municipalities is quite significant. And when you say an official plan amendment is 3 to 6 months and a zoning bylaw is 2 to 6 months, when there's significant case law out there that says that official plans were never intended by the legislature to regulate land use, why do we not just use the zoning bylaws? Zoning bylaws, I do believe, are a proper tool to regulate land use. So what's the purpose of always doing both when we could technically regulate it through the zoning bylaw, and forcing somebody that wants to open a business, now they've got to go to an official plan 3 to 6 months to just get that approval, as opposed to, saying, okay, we're going to put in a minor variance for the zoning or whatever it is that they need. Why do we need to go to that length?
Through the chair, so we don't always require an official plan amendment for every zoning bylaw. If it's a zoning amendment that conforms the official plan already, then we wouldn't require the official plan amendment. We tend to do minor variances just for something that's considered minor. So there's the 4 tests, and one of them is it minor? So we do process a lot of minor variances. It's generally a change of land use or something more substantial that has to go through the zoning bylaw amendment practice. It's my understanding it has to be in conformity with the official plan, and if it's not, then they have to go through the official plan amendment process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, just one more. Have you by chance been able to, I know I've passed it around to a few planners over the time, but had a chance to read any of the case law that says that municipalities shouldn't be using official plans to regulate land use?
Through the chair, I haven't seen that case
Okay.
law, but you could send it to me.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alicia, you mentioned that you use the Conservation Authority's recommendations when you're making decisions about whether or not something should be on hazard land or not. And I'm just wondering, what is the process if someone wants to build something on hazard land and they have a totally new and unique building method or procedure that they claim would be able to withstand whatever the concern is on hazard land? How do we decide if that new idea is valid or not?
Through the chair, that's a little complicated, I think, for me, but generally, if they talk to the Conservation Authority about it, they do need to get a permit from the Conservation Authority for that development. If the CA determines that it's acceptable, then we would likely support it as well. But again, it's hard to speak generally about that because I know you can kind of engineer lots of different things that would withstand flooding or other hazards. And it's kind of up to the building department to accept it or an engineer to determine that. But generally, again, if the Conservation Authority thinks it's acceptable, then we would probably be okay with it. But it's hard to speak kind of generally about that.
Thank you, Alicia.
Okay. Councillor Rabbits first, then Van Pass.
Thank you, and through the chair to Alicia. My question was pertaining to provincially significant wetlands, and we've recently had an update with where those are, and I was wondering how they relate to hazard land specifically. In the last slide that we had saw regarding hazard lands, and specifically in, I want to say that's in Long Point, but there's also a lot of updates in Turkey Point recently. I see some overlap. I was wondering how they relate to each other, and if this is maybe a better question for a little later on in our presentation, that's just fine. But I was wondering if you could provide any insight as to how they overlap or how those two designations might relate to each other.
Through the chair, so there are a lot of cases where there's a provincially significant wetland surrounded by hazard land, like the case here along Big Creek. So the wetlands are determined by the Ministry of Natural Resources using the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System. And then the Conservation Authority determines the hazard lands. So sometimes a wetland can be seen in, for example, there's some cases where they're in the middle of a field. There's nothing really hazardous around that. Sometimes they're in association with a river or connected somehow to that ecosystem. So there are other hazards in that area. So a PSW on its own isn't generally considered hazardous, but because they're often linked through things such as rivers, then they can become part of a hazard land system, if that makes sense.
Okay. Councillor Van Passen.
Mr. Chairman, and through you to the planner, now it's a follow-up almost to Councillor Michelle's question, but when you have the new technologies and you ask for an amendment on the hazard land, are you asking for a change of use on the land, or are they changing that it's no longer hazard land?
Through the chair, I think in that specific example, they'd be asking for an additional use on the hazard land because the land itself still would be considered hazardous. It would just be a new use within it that could potentially withstand the hazard.
Okay. Anybody else? I've got a question here. We hear a lot about provincially significant wetlands, but are there not also locally significant wetlands?
Yes, there are.
Can you describe the difference, please?
I'm not sure. I think most of our wetlands are considered provincially significant, but I believe locally significant would not. There's a point system for scoring wetlands. So I believe, my understanding is that if you have a certain number of points, so there's certain criteria that's met, it's provincially significant, and then kind of a step down is locally significant.
Madam Mayor.
Just out of curiosity, what was our involvement in the redesignation, the addition of some of those lands? And were any lands that were potentially mislabeled as provincially significant wetlands, were any removed in this last?
Through the chair, so we weren't involved in designating the land. It all comes from the Ministry of Natural Resources. And there are many cases in this update where land is being removed from that designation.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much, Alicia. Who's next? Stephen?
All right, thank you, Council. This afternoon, I'll be providing an overview on deeming bylaws as well as part law control applications. I'll start off by saying with deeming bylaws, as you can see from the last 10 years, we do see a handful of these every year, if any at all. They are kind of more rare applications compared to the official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments that we do receive. So a deeming bylaw allows for 2 or more lots in a registered plan of subdivision to be removed from a plan of subdivision, which allows them to merge and remain merged. So lots in a registered plan of subdivision are forever lots until deeming bylaw comes forward. And the only stipulation in the Planning Act regarding this is that the registered plan of subdivision be registered for at least 8 years at the time of application. So again, we don't see too many of these applications, but one example that we did see this past year was the deeming bylaw on 2 undersized resort residential properties in Long Point to allow for a larger building area for a new vacation home on the merged property. I should say deeming bylaws and part law control applications, they are dealt with at council and committee. There is no public meeting component required under the Planning Act for these 2 applications, so they would be heard at a meeting just like the one today. Part law control exemption bylaws are sort of the opposite to deeming bylaws in that where a deeming bylaw allows lots to merge together, a part law control application further divides blocks within a registered plan of subdivision. So it's very often that when a plan of subdivision is registered, there are blocks identified for future high-density development, such as a freehold townhouse development. At the time the subdivision is registered, maybe the plans aren't final at that point, so a part law control application would likely come forward at the time of building when they are looking to divide the block into different units and different lots. So I'll provide an example of that as well. So you see there were 2 blocks here in the registered plan of subdivision that were further divided into different lots through part law control exemption for freehold townhouse development. So I know that was a pretty brief overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions of those 2 applications at this time.
Questions? Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Why is it 8 years for the waiting period for that requirement? Just why is it the 8 years, I guess?
Thanks. Through the chair, I don't know about the exact 8-year date, but I do understand that it would have to do with allowing the plan of subdivision to exist as approved for a certain amount of time before certain changes to the parcel fabric are permitted.
Okay. Madam Mayor?
Just through you, Mr. Chair, just one quick question. The deeming bylaws, you might not be able to answer this even, Stephen, I'm sorry. And the part law control, why do we bring those to CIC and not just have those go to Committee of Adjustments?
Through the chair, I could follow up with that question. All I know is that it isn't required to go to a public meeting under the Planning Act. So through that, kind of as a technical matter, we would address it at CIC. I'm not sure if Pam would like to jump in.
Through the chair, that's a good question, Mayor Chop. We never really considered taking them to Committee of Adjustment. We'll look into it and email council that answer.
It might be a good, just as these meetings become longer and longer, it might be a good thing to do.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Van Passen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have this correct in my mind still that part law control is generally when if we approve like a townhouse structure, we let them build it first and then we sever it along the walls rather than making contractors find the survey line and put the brick wall there. We just let them build it and then cut it up. Right?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Makes sense. Anything further? No. Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Who we have left? Shannon?
It is me. Good afternoon, Chair Columbus and Mayor Chop and Council. So I am bringing forward another kind of planning tool that we have in our box, and it's with regards to site plan control. So site plan control looks at more of the technical or functional elements for a development with respect to construction and moving forward. Site plans typically look at the building function, entrances, lighting, landscaping, traffic flows, parking layouts, that sort of thing to ensure that there's some compatibility with the neighboring properties. Site plan control typically applies to more of your high density or your higher density residential zones. It applies to commercial properties, industrial properties, and some institutional zones. There's also some instances where you might see it in like an open space zone where you've got a tent and trailer park or some of those items, and also to cannabis facilities. So looking at site plan control, it is a tool that we use to evaluate developments, and it works in conjunction with review with a variety of other departments and agencies. It gets circulated, and there is typically supporting documentation that comes along with the site plan submission. There's landscape plans that go along with it. There's traffic impact studies. You have functional servicing reports, stormwater information. So all that kind of gets together in terms of the overall development and helps us determine the appropriateness of the site for the development and the layout. With site plan control, we do look at working with if there's any potential need for buffering. If you have adjacent residential uses, we might look to have a fence with some trees there. If they're proposing a drive-through, the orientation of the speaker so that you're not kind of directing it onto adjacent properties, vehicle movement so you're not shining on other properties or onto the road when people are trying to exit and enter the site, and also kind of the pedestrian element to that as well. So in terms of our site plans, we have over the last few years processed typically in around the 30 site plan application marks, where we have 13 regular site plans. So this is where you would have kind of full new construction on a property. We've looked at 19 minor site plan applications, which is where you're dealing with more of an amendment or some sort of small change to a site plan. That might be if you have some existing buildings where they're just putting a small addition on or changing the use somehow to that end. And then 30 site plan waivers where it's not really considered development for the property, and so they have been deemed to not be required to go through the site plan process. Typically, in terms of the site plan process, I want to say it generally takes about 4 to 6 months to get through the site plan process, with some applications taking longer or shorter, just depending, again, on the complexity or the nature of the application, and the development in itself at hand and the neighborhood that we're working with. So that kind of gives you a quick rundown of the site plan process, site plan applications, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or see what I can do to follow up with some answers as well.
Did you guys draw straws for who was going to get this one?
I actually love site plans. I kind of get some slack from my other planners here because I enjoy them so much. But I do enjoy the site plan because it's fun to work with some of those design elements to it.
So I guess just a couple things I want to point out at the beginning, and this comes back to my frustration. So site plan control typically applies to high density, applies to cannabis facilities, and so on. Again, I just can't reiterate enough, it should not be the use that triggers it. The Planning Act empowers a municipality to designate all or part of a region as being subject to site plan control. And in order for that thing to trigger site plan control, it has to meet the definition of development under Section 41. So if you had a fully constructed operational greenhouse, it's not the fact that you're putting cannabis in it. That's not the trigger. In my view, and from all the research that I've done, that's not meeting the definition of development. So would the cannabis facility still be subject to, odor control bylaws and lighting bylaws and all of these other bylaws that we have in Norfolk County to protect people? Absolutely. But it's not the fact that we're putting cannabis in the building that's triggering site plan control. If it doesn't meet the definition of development, we as a county can't just arbitrarily say, well, you're subject to site plan control. I don't believe that was the intention of the legislature. In terms of the number of site plan projects that we have go through, can you explain the jump that occurred between 2015, where there was 13, and then what we're seeing now, 2016, 30?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely, Madam Mayor. In terms of the jump or the increase there's a couple of factors. One is going to be the development or the adoption of the Norfolk County zoning bylaw, and that the community's kind of coming together under one document that way. So you would see properties that may not have been subject to site plan control now having to go through that process, as well as an overall increase in terms of development in Norfolk County. Since 2015, I would say that there's definitely been an increase in our applications overall across the board, not only the site plans, but in terms of zoning applications, committee of adjustment, and the like.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just one more time. So what I've seen kind of in other municipalities, what they've gone and done, and is sort of what I think it's something we need to start looking at as Norfolk County, and curious your opinion on it. They've gone and said, okay, listen, if you don't anticipate increasing traffic during the peak traffic hour of more than 100 cars, then the traffic study is exempt. If you don't anticipate so on, so that there's an element of common sense to it that comes into play, versus right now it's a team of planners, I'm assuming, that arbitrarily decides whether or not a site plan waiver is granted or not on a property.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the site plan waivers versus minor versus full and what gets required potentially through that, we do determine that through some consultation with the developer, with the proponent of the property. And we do have discussions with some of our other departments and agencies in terms of potential requirements. So in terms of like a traffic element, we would want to speak with our development engineering team to see whether or not that there might be some potential considerations there. And then we can kind of figure out whether or not or how in-depth it needs to go. And through our pre-consultation process, we try and flush some of those items out as well. So it's not just kind of a singular decision that's being made, that it is looking at kind of the overall. And it is something that we are trying to kind of continually grow and monitor and look at it in terms of flexibility and what gets applied where. So
I just think when we look at, we're 3 to 6 months for an official plan amendment, and we're 2 to 6 months for a zoning bylaw amendment, and we're 4 to 6 months for a site plan requirement. I mean, Rick with the Good Bread Company, it's an example I continuously come back to. I mean, it shouldn't take 2 years plus to get into an existing building that's been there for, 100 years plus, and to do something good for the community. I just think that we've maybe gone a little overboard with, again, what the intention of the legislature was meant to be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Further, Councillor Van Passen, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to mirror the comments of the mayor there, that I always get the sense from the complaints I get that, a site plan is always required unless the applicant can prove he doesn't need it. And when do we switch that to say, you know what, you don't need it unless there's a real proven need for some of those things? And, is there a way to start making that shift sort of on how we look for what we require? And, as the mayor said, traffic studies that they're automatically required unless you can prove that you don't need them. Well, if you can prove you don't need them, you might as well just done the study because it's basically the same evidence.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. And in terms of some of those requirements, it could be so much as, from a traffic perspective, there are some criteria that have been identified through our Integrated Sustainable Master Plan, or ISMP, that's been developed by our Public Works Department. So there's kind of criteria when we're looking at traffic studies that way. And it might be so, I don't want to say as little as, but it might be just a brief or a letter that would be required, not a full study saying that some of that isn't required. But again, it is something we have met recently with our development community. Myself, together with Devin Hunter, our Director of Development Engineering, we sat down with a number of developers, engineers, consultants, planners to talk about process that other municipalities have, processes that have worked for Norfolk County that they like, maybe some areas for opportunities for improvements and that sort of thing. So we are working with that, and hopefully we will be able to bring forward some of those changes or system upgrades as we kind of move through. But it is something that we're kind of continually trying to work with and grow as a department. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Martin and Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shannon. Just to clarify then, would it be the planning team that then makes the final decision on whether that development it constitutes change of use?
Through you, Mr. Chair, ultimately the messaging comes from planning, but typically it is something that we have discussions with a larger group.
If I may, Mr. Chair, to me it would seem like traffic and all of those additional things that you maybe have conversations with other departments are relevant, but they are not necessarily privy to the use of this development structure like the planning team would be. You're the ones having these pre-consultation meetings and whatnot. So I guess I'm just wondering if that final change of use, which is what follows the site plan, if I'm understanding correctly, if that is a planning department decision. That's what I was wondering.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would say, yes, in terms of the use, it's something that from a planning side of things, we would have kind of that ultimate call. But I think it's more the use and the function of the property that we want to look at for the community as a whole.
Okay. Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Chairman, and through the chair to Shannon. My first question, and I have a couple, I hope you'll entertain them, is in regards to an agent and an applicant, why they may want site plan control in your professional opinion. I'm thinking maybe it's due to potential liabilities. Perhaps they would like to reduce the potential for OMB or LPAT applications. I'm thinking that might be a reason why someone would want site plan control on their property, but can you think in any other instance why a developer, their agent, and the applicant might actually desire a form of site plan control, if not full, maybe even in a minor instance?
Through the chair, in terms of site plan, it does provide opportunities for the dialogue, for the layout. A lot of the times, in speaking with developers, they have a good sense, but without knowing some of the background of the community and that sort of thing, it does help to alleviate. And then through site plan as well, in some circumstances where you're looking at maybe like townhouse developments coming in or that sort of thing, you can look at having some opportunity for some of that dialogue with the neighbors and hopefully maybe coming to some kind of negotiation or terms in terms of the layout, potential screenings. It can add that extra level of clarity, I guess, in terms of the property as well as just the overall function with the neighborhood.
Thank you. And my follow-up question to that was a softball first, the hard one comes next. In your professional opinion, Shannon, through the chair, why would an applicant and their agent not want site plan control? And from what I've heard from some of the criticism is it does add a layer of bureaucracy or complexity to a building project. It can cause significant delays, added costs. Not always often deemed necessary, and I'm piggybacking a little bit on Mr. Van Passen's comments and the comments of Mayor Chop regarding the frustration that many experience in going through the site plan control process. I know that for a smaller business, a mom and pop type operation that has to negotiate a site plan control, it can be a deal breaker for them. It adds costs. A larger corporation, and I want to use the verbiage, someone with deep pockets can stomach a delay to their project. They can maybe have these additional costs that they were not anticipating brought forward at site plan control process and stomach those additional costs. They've budgeted for it. But for a smaller applicant or for a smaller type of project, these can actually be deal breakers and cause that business to not move, not expand. And I want to make sure that we're not stifling, these applications from coming forward in our community. And I just kind of wanted, a generic response from yourself as to why someone wouldn't want site plan control to be applied to their development, from your professional opinion as a planner.
I think you kind of hit answered my question for me in terms of your asking it. I think when you're looking at it, I think there is concern in terms of additional costs for some of the studies and reports that could be required as part of that. I think that could be a limiting factor in terms of applications moving forward, and I think that's something that we need to look at in terms of where the requirements are coming in and what is actually needed as part of the process.
Thank you, and if you'll entertain my last question here. Thank you very much for the explanation, and through the chair, Shannon, for site plan control. I would like a little bit more of an explanation regarding minor site plan. And from my layman's perspective, it seems almost as a compromise, and that might not be the right way to interpret a minor site plan. And I was just wondering if we could have a little bit more detail as to what exactly a minor site plan is, how you would drive to that outcome, as opposed to waiving it entirely, or having an applicant and their agent go through the full site plan control for a property. What exactly is a minor site plan, and why would that be considered? Is that through the consultation process that you arrive to that outcome, or is it something that is suggested at the outset due to the land use or the size of the development? I was just hoping for some general comments regarding a minor site plan, what it is, and how you'd end up at that outcome if you were developing in Norfolk County.
Absolutely, through the chair. So in terms of minor site plans, typically, in my experience, when we're dealing with a minor site plan, it would be in circumstances where there was previously approved site plan and they're making some changes. So they're putting an addition onto it to increase the size of the operation. And it's a mechanism to make sure that there's going to be no kind of impacts to the property, that your parking is still going to be provided, that there's, depending on where the addition's going to go, that there's no impact on grading or drainage onto adjacent properties. Situations like that where it's a small addition or a small change to the property that way. Or in some circumstances, you can see it where it's in an existing building and they're coming in with a new use, and there's the anticipation that there could be some additional traffic or, again, additional parking requirements. They want to come in and do some paving or change the entrances. So it's an opportunity just to make sure that there's no kind of impact on the traffic flow for the road network, or if they need to add any infrastructure, that we can make sure that it kind of meets the county standards that way. In terms of the process, it's definitely, it's a shorter time frame, it's a shorter process. There's not typically the need for any of the additional studies or requirements. It's typically just the plan that gets submitted with that, with maybe some like a summary or an outline of what's happening. And it doesn't go to kind of all the departments and agencies. So through some of that preliminary discussions and pre-consultations, we've kind of flagged with them and kind of ruled out, okay, it doesn't need a stormwater management, or it doesn't need a traffic study, or it's outside of the conservation area, so they don't need a permit from the CA. So it kind of scopes it down. So it's typically planning, maybe building, maybe engineering that would look at it. So it really scopes down who's getting involved in terms of the circulation and input on it. I hope that helps to answer the question.
Thank you. Mayor Chop, did I see your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So just, I want to come back to Councillor Rabbit's comment, but just on something you said now, in terms of existing site plan or minor site plan would apply to an existing development that comes with a new use. Where in the definition of Section 41 does it talk about a new use?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms, it's not necessarily the use, it's looking at any kind of addition or alteration where you're substantially increasing the usability of a building. So if it's, maybe you didn't have a high, I don't know, a seamstress maybe for something, for example, she was in a building and now it's turning into a pizza, where you're having something that could generate, or a Tim Hortons, where you're having something that could generate a lot more traffic flow. It's the usability of the property, not necessarily the use itself, but how that property is being, how it functions, how it's being used in terms of the greater scheme of things.
Okay, so that language is much more on that substantially increasing the usability.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of going from a bank to a hotel, is that substantially increasing the usability?
It's hard to say specifically. Like I think we need to look at the property in itself and what's around it. I would say not necessarily that it could be, because you're getting a lot of kind of in and out traffic with a bank, whereas you wouldn't have that same action, I guess, with a hotel. So there's the potential that in that circumstance, site plan would not be required, because you're not increasing the usability.
No, I agree. Through you, Mr. Chair, just kind of to Councillor Rabbits, just to make a comment. I know there was an article during the campaign period that was written about developers that liked site plan control. I just want to say to Councillor Rabbits, if he could find me one of those developers, I'll buy his beer bill for the rest of the year. Because I think that, I know I jump all over the site plan control piece all the time, but to be very clear, do I think that there is a time and a place for site plan control? Absolutely. I mean, the reason that it was designed was to ensure that, municipalities weren't left holding the bag with building sidewalks, and ensure lighting was in place, and all of these factors that come in. So I definitely think that there's a time and place for it, particularly with development like that. However, do I think that developers like it? Well, no, because, there's every delay that they have, they own a piece of property, they want to build on it, and so now you have to go through this whole process. Well, who's paying the debt on the property, while it's sitting there doing nothing for a year or 2 years or sometimes even more? I think as we see housing prices are escalating, all of these additional costs and all of that, when these timelines, when developers don't have certainty, all of that eventually gets passed on to the final buyer. And so it's certainly not the developer that's bearing the cost. There is an interesting article, a research paper that was done for the Ontario Association of Architects in 2008. And they went to a number of developers and they compared a wide variety of municipalities. And they speak of, as a result of there not being guidelines for municipalities to follow, the additional costs that people end up incurring and how that ultimately gets passed on to the final consumer. So that's just my 2 cents on that bit.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Van Pass.
Just to answer the mayor's question, I could say that I love jabbing this pen into my side because it feels so good when I stop.
Okay, moving on to planning of subdivisions and condominiums. Is that you, Pam?
I'm the bell. And I know everyone loves to talk about site plan in Norfolk County, but I would like to wrap up the site plan portion by saying that site plan is a tool that we have in our toolbox. It's an important tool. It's an important tool that we're still learning to work with, I think, in Norfolk County. And I would offer that if council has any suggestions, comments, questions, please contact us as planning staff. We're happy to help and answer those questions and work through some of our challenges with you. I always give the analogy that my children don't like eating vegetables. They would prefer chocolate cake. But in order for them to be healthy and grow, just as it's important for our community to be healthy and grow and be responsible for our traffic, our safety of our residents, the vegetables are an important piece of being healthy. And they do cost more, but in the end, we create a better development, we create a better community with site plan control within our toolbox. We just have to learn how to balance eating vegetables and cake at the same time.
Good job.
I just want to make sure that as we look forward to possible solutions down the road, that it is a fair and equitable toolbox to all constituents of Norfolk County.
Well noted.
And not on individual bases. Thanks.
Okay.
Last from the Norfolk County Planning Team is Matt Vaughn, who's going to be talking about subdivisions and condos.
Welcome, Matt.
Thanks very much. So a plan of subdivision is a method of dividing land into parcels on lots so that they can be held in separate ownership. The approval process is governed by Section 51 of the Planning Act and includes considerations of where things like streets, schools, pathways, sidewalks, trails, parks, homes, and businesses will be located. Subdivision plans must also address such things as servicing issues related to roads, storm, and sanitary sewers, water usage, lighting, emergency access, parking, and the protection of natural features such as woodlots or watercourses. A registered plan of subdivision is a legal document that shows the exact surveyed boundaries and dimensions of lots on which houses or buildings are going to be built. It'll show the location, width, and names of the streets and the sites of any schools or parks. The plan doesn't show specific building locations, and the rules for locating buildings are set out in the zoning bylaw and shown on plans as part of the site plan approval typically. We've had a relatively slow but steady increase of subdivision-related and condo-related applications over the years, and again, it's very similar to other forms of applications that we've seen increase from the 2015 timeframe. We'll jump into condos. So condos are a collection of individual home or other types of units in common areas along which the land that they sit, individual home ownership or the unit ownership within a condominium is construed of ownership of only the airspace confining the boundaries of the home or unit. The boundaries of that space are specified by a legal document known as the declaration, and that declaration has a lot of clout, and it really specifies what people can and can't do with their units. Typically, these boundaries of the condo will include things like a wall or surrounding the condo, and allowed a homeowner or unit owner to make some interior modifications without impacting the common area. Anything outside of that boundary is held in an undivided ownership interest by a corporation that's established at the time of the condo's creation. The corporation holds the property in trust on behalf of the homeowners or unit owners as a group, and it may not have ownership itself. Condominiums do have conditions, covenants, and restrictions, and often additional rules that govern how the individual unit owners are to share their space. There's different kinds of condos that we see in Norfolk, but generally speaking, the three most common are standard condo, and an example of that would be one parcel of land, and there would be multiple units on that land. Next would be a common element condo, so that's where you see individual lots, and they are tied to what would be a condo road. And then the third is vacant land. So vacant land is typically where you divide out parcels of land, and it is tied to common areas like roads and parks and that sorts of thing. So Dover Coast would be an example of what a vacant land condo would be. I guess I'll just wrap up the condo part of that just by saying condo is really just a form of ownership. You can make anything a condo. You can make a mailbox a condo if you really want. And we're starting to see more and more condos come up in the county. There are tax benefits of owning an apartment that's a condo versus just owning a regular apartment. So I think we'll start seeing more and more of these types of applications come across our desk in the future. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions to Matt? Don't see any questions, Matt.
Thank
you for your presentation.
And at this time, we're going to ask our friends from the province, Eric Boyd and David Stubbs, to come up and give us a provincial overview.
Welcome, David.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having us out today. So my name is David Stubbs, and I'm here with Eric Boyd, and we're from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We're in the Western Municipal Service Office. So we're based out of London, and we work with municipalities from Windsor all the way up to Waterloo. Thank you. So the Municipal Service Offices is your primary point of contact within the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and we're also the one-window portal into other ministries. There's 3 areas within our office: local government, housing, and planning, and we build municipal capacity through providing advice and training on things such as elections, asset management practices, municipal shared services, community improvement plans, revenue and planning tools, financial management practices, and service delivery reviews. On the planning side, we assist in accountable local decision-making and promote the use of existing planning tools. We also provide advice regarding government initiatives, identify and disseminate best practices, partner with municipalities and others for common goals, and build effective relationships between ourselves, partner ministries, and municipalities. So looking at the land use planning framework in Ontario, the responsibility for land use planning in Ontario is shared between the provinces and municipalities. The province sends out the legal ground rules and general policy direction for land use planning through the Planning Act and through the provincial policy statement. Municipalities implement the province's land use planning policy framework by preparing official plans and make land use planning decisions to achieve their community's economic, social, environmental objectives while implementing provincial policy direction. Municipal decisions must be consistent with the provincial policy statement and have regard for provincial interests set out in the Planning Act. So I'll talk briefly about the one-window planning services and municipal plan review. Under the Planning Act, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing is the approval authority for all land use planning matters in Ontario. Having said that, the Minister has delegated, exempted, or assigned this authority to municipalities. Municipalities are tasked with carrying out the responsibilities of the Minister in its planning decisions. So under the one-window planning service, MMAH provides integrated planning decisions on applications on behalf of ourselves and 9 other provincial ministries with interest in land use planning. While under the municipal plan review, municipalities review and make decisions on local planning applications with the responsibility to make planning decisions that are consistent with the provincial policies. Touch on the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. The LPAT is an independent tribunal to hear appeals and to make decisions on a variety of municipal land use planning matters. When people are unable to resolve their differences or disputes on planning decisions made by municipalities, they can appeal those decisions to the LPAT. Participation in the municipal planning process is an important legal requirement if the public wishes to make an appeal. Additionally, the failure of a planning authority to make a decision in most planning applications within legislated time periods can also be appealed to the LPAT. It's important to note that the land use planning appeal system has recently changed from the OMB to the LPAT, and one of the changes resulting from this transition is the removal of the ability to appeal provincial decisions on new official plans and major updates to official plans, such as Norfolk County's recent 5-year review of its official plan.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about municipal planning tools, and it's the Planning Act that provides the planning tools that exist in Ontario, and sometimes we call them tools. They're also planning applications to a large extent. On the list, we've talked a lot today. You've heard from planning staff here about official plans, zoning bylaws, minor variances. site plan control we talked about. There's also community improvement plans, and I believe council would know there are a couple community improvement plans that exist in Norfolk County that serve a specific purpose, generally speaking. And there's a couple other, well, a few other tools I'm going to mention as well. The community planning permit system was formerly the development permit system, and that's a tool that exists that would combine a number of different planning processes, and I think the objective is to sort of streamline the approval of a development proposal, and specifically it looks to consolidate the zoning bylaw amendment process, minor variance approval, site plan approval, generally those three. It's also been used in some municipalities for site alteration and even tree cutting bylaw permissions for specific developments. In addition to the community planning permit system, there's a newer regulation under the Planning Act that refers to inclusionary zoning, and that's a specific type of tool that would, generally speaking, seek to require a certain number of new units within a residential development to be affordable housing units. There are some municipalities that are just now embarking on the process to introduce inclusionary zoning within their area. And along with inclusionary zoning, looking to achieve affordable housing in your community, there's also second unit provisions, and Norfolk's official plan and zoning bylaw does contain provisions that would permit second units in residential areas and in certain other zones. So just switching then to the participants in the land use planning system in Ontario. So just a couple specific, I guess, participants that are really key to the process. The public, as you know, the public play a key role in the land use planning process. There's a public consultation aspect to most planning applications, and also when municipalities update their official plans. And that public process is designed to give individuals the opportunity to share their views and ideas about the community's overall planning objectives, how they would like to see the community grow, what should be the priorities for growth in certain areas of the community. And with that public process as well, certain planning applications can be subject then to appeal to the planning tribunal. With respect to indigenous communities, there are a couple indigenous neighbors close to Norfolk County here, Six Nations and Mississaugas of the New Credit, that you would be familiar with, and the planning system recognizes those indigenous communities as key players, and generally speaking, they do often have an interest in planning in their traditional territories. And ideally, we encourage municipalities to engage with indigenous communities as part of the land use planning process as appropriate. And specifically, there's requirements in the Planning Act regulations for circulating to indigenous communities, and the regulations under the Act as well that I will not bore you with talk about how to engage with the public as well and timeframes for that. So, there's been presentations by planning staff respecting pre-consultation processes that exist here in Norfolk County, and generally speaking, the province recognizes that early consultation and pre-consultation is a really key part of the planning process, insofar as it helps to communicate the ground rules to applicants and to developers and also their consultants. And it creates certainty with respect to the policies and zoning bylaw regulations that may be relevant to that planning application. It helps then to communicate what information would be required as part of what's called a complete application. There's provisions in the Planning Act that essentially say municipalities can, through their official plan, set out in policy what constitutes the minimum requirements for a complete application. And the last bullet talks about the approval authority. Really, that's for planning applications like an official plan amendment in Norfolk County. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as the lead ministry in the provincial land use planning system, is considered the approval authority. That's really just a Planning Act term. But for major official plan updates and official plan amendments, there is that requirement to consult with the approval authority, with the ministry, and then our ministry in turn determines if, depending on the nature of the application, there are other ministries that may have an interest in the matter, then we would seek to consult with them as appropriate as well. So not to spend too much time, because I don't want to sort of duplicate information that's already been provided. This sort of slide just talks a little bit about the expertise that staff and then in turn council, when making decisions on planning applications, may require as part of a complete application process. And then I'm just going to sort of end off with a slide that talks about helpful considerations. And when in the past we've done training for new councils post-municipal election, we have mentioned that land use planning can form a very large part of the decision-making for a municipal council, and I think at times it can be surprising how much time is spent around the council and committee tables as well, of course, with respect to land use planning matters, whether that's planning applications or updating planning documents. We've talked about the provincial policy statement already and talked about new tools as well. So, Mr. Chair, I think I'll just leave our provincial presentation at that then. Thank you for your time.
Okay, you ready for questions then? Questions from committee? Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to our deputation, thank you very much for your presentation today. My question is pertaining to some demographic change that we're experiencing in Norfolk County, and what I found as an interesting learning curve in researching planning and praising myself of the current condition here in Norfolk County regarding our bylaws and our ability to get development going here pertains to how planning affects people, and really that's what a lot of this is drawing down to, is how does it affect the people that are utilizing these spaces. And with regards to demographics, we have an aging population here, and that's no secret to anyone. And as we move further down this road and we start to have a larger cohort of those that are elderly, I was wondering what sort of new planning tools or what the province could potentially offer to a municipality such as ours that is growing in age, and specifically having that larger cohort of elderly persons who may require additional supports, different types of housing arrangements. And I was wondering if you had maybe a response in your hip pocket to Norfolk County's situation particularly. It's something that's nationwide, but it's something specifically that's going to be affecting our community in the years to come.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor, it's a really good question, and it's one that comes up often, not just in rural or mixed urban-rural communities, but in larger urban municipalities as well, because you're quite correct that we have an aging population in Canada as a whole, and that brings with it challenges on numerous fronts. In the land use planning system, I think one challenge then is how to engage with that demographic and ensure that they're engaged and feel part of the community when it comes to decision making in general. But if we're focused on land use planning, then we might find that sort of technology may not necessarily be the main way in which they receive and disseminate information. With respect to on-the-ground planning, though, and ensuring that appropriate forms of housing are developed, there is a document, I'm trying to remember how long ago we developed it in our ministry. It was known as Age-Friendly Communities, and it had some ideas with respect to forms of development and specifically types of housing that can be sort of adaptable for people as they age, so that they're not necessarily finding that they have to move to an apartment or to a new form of residential development. They can sort of age in place, and that was recognized as quite important, and I think still is, and it assists as well with other community supports when we're dealing with healthcare systems, public health services to the elderly as well. Having the ability to stay where they are does assist with overall healthcare costs. What I can do when I get back to the office is take a look for resource material that specifically relates to that item and share that with staff then. I think it is a really, really important topic and something for us all to be aware of and perhaps to be thinking about when new development proposals come in. Like affordable housing, I can say, is very much a priority of our government now, and that's affordable housing that meets the needs of the full spectrum of population that exists, so that can be individuals in urban areas, it can be young families, but it can also be elderly people that are on like limited pensions and still require a place to live. So let me take a look for some material that we would be able to share then.
Okay. Further questions? Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the deputation. Thanks for coming, sir. Appreciate it. I guess you made a statement that the Planning Act provides planning tools, but I would take that one step further. It provides a set of statutory rules and regulations. And within those rules and regulations, there is some latitude or flexibility that's given to municipalities, may do something versus must do something. And I know that your government speaks extensively, of course, of reducing red tape. So I'm just wondering, you know, in this case, what does the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, in your view, do to ensure that municipalities don't overstep those rules and regulations that are in place? Because the article that I quoted a little earlier when we were talking about site plan control, this document from 2008 in the Ontario Association of Architects, that's one example where, you know, where I see there's kind of a lack of oversight by the ministry is they went on to say, hey, it's not your wording in the legislation that's the problem. It's okay. But there was never a guideline document. So even, I've got a background in aviation, even some rules in aviation, if it wasn't clearly understood to begin with, they provide a guideline document to say, this is how you're supposed to interpret it. And in particular, there's other areas, certainly with the official plan and so on, but in particular with site plan control, there is one case where people have lobbied the government in the past, not this government, to say, hey, why don't you create a guideline document so that municipalities understand what you meant when you wrote this legislation and so that they don't overstep it. And to me, that's like such an easy, low-hanging fruit to reduce red tape, and yet it's very easily kind of overlooked.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Chop, I understand the question, and with respect to, I guess, just starting at sort of a matter of principle, with respect to oversight, I would say that both in the land use planning world and in the sort of local government world, colleagues of mine in our office that work with municipal clerks and treasurers, we really don't maintain that kind of rigid oversight role or policing or enforcing role over municipalities. And I think in part it kind of recognizes, well, there's two facets to that. One, it recognizes the evolution of planning authority and decision-making authority that has occurred over the last 20 years, where there was a time back in this area, in the regional municipality of Haldeman Norfolk days, where the ministry still had approval authority for things like plans of subdivision way back when. Over the last couple decades, there has been sort of an evolution where municipalities have continuously attained more authority with respect to planning decision making. And now in much of Western Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, our ministry reviews and approves new official plans for municipalities and major official plan updates. And otherwise, municipalities are charged in both upper tier counties and single-tier municipalities like Norfolk and the City of London. Municipalities are charged with making decisions on those applications. We retain the ability to appeal decisions that we feel are not consistent with the provincial policy statement and that we feel do not properly protect or recognize provincial interests. But even appeals are something that we don't like to act on very often. With respect to municipalities, and I'll use the term just in a general way because I have seen it characterized as overstepping, as an example. To use that term, there are a number of different things that we have done, that I have done specifically, and some of that can be sharing best practices with municipalities. That could be initiated by contact from municipal planning staff to ministry staff directly, where we share best practices, meaning we talk about approaches that other municipalities have taken, things that we've seen that seem to be a good practice, that work, that seem to sort of accomplish the overall objective of whatever provision in the Planning Act that we're dealing with. There's other subtle ways that we can reach out. There's been times where I've picked up the phone, I can think a few years ago, where I noticed a notice for a planning application that just wasn't update with changes to the regulation, and so it just wasn't a proper notice. I've picked up the phone and had a discussion with municipal staff about that. The ministry has produced, our ministry and partner ministries as well, working in their areas of expertise, have produced guidance documents. And also, so guidance documents that are sort of, there's a spectrum to those as well. Some are info sheets, which are like ideas for housing policies, affordable housing policies that may assist with developing and encouraging developers to provide more affordable housing in new development. And through the spectrum all the way to guidelines, which are sort of a bit more rigid maybe, like the guidelines on permitted uses. What we often hear though, and what we hear from municipalities, and also what I would say we hear often from governments, from provincial governments, is that municipalities are responsible and accountable levels of government. They're charged with making decisions on matters within their sphere of jurisdiction, and that we have to respect that. And so what I'm getting at with respect to guidelines is there is that certain amount of tension with respect to how far we go provincially in suggesting to municipalities this is how, you know, you should conduct your process or decision making in this particular sphere. However, having said all that, I'll end with one comment. And Mayor Chop mentioned that streamlining development approvals is a priority of this provincial government now. There is a lot of work happening behind the scenes with respect to streamlining development approvals. We're hearing feedback from municipalities, but we're hearing a lot of feedback from developers, from proponents across Ontario. We're hearing about things that work, and we're hearing about a lot of things that don't work, that clog up the system. And so specifically with respect to site plan control, I can take the comment, the suggestion back to our team and our policy colleagues that are working on that, with the suggestion that maybe there be some consideration to, I'm not, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, not to put words in Mayor Chop's mouth, but maybe clarifying, or if there's something specific.
Well, I guess it goes back to, you know, yes, the planning departments do have delegated authority, and in your comment about being the sort of responsible and accountable level of government, but whether they have the delegated authority or not, the Planning Act is still statute legislation. That is the law, and so you can overstep the law, whether or not you have that delegated authority or not. So in terms of the guideline document, this 2008 Site Plan Control Ontario Association of Architects is what I would suggest looking at. And when you look at streamlining development applications and you know, making Ontario more open for business, it's a very interesting document because it talks, we have minor site plan here and site plan waivers and full site plan control. In other municipalities, they have it based on, like I mentioned earlier, a traffic study might be required if you're increasing, you know, peak traffic flow at a certain time. But wouldn't it be a great Ontario if everybody had the same rules applied across? If there was some guideline document to be able to use that to facilitate, and that way, if you had whether a developer was coming here or was going, you know, next door in Haldeman, there should be some level of certainty for them when they look at developing somewhere. It shouldn't be that you walk in somewhere and you don't know. And yes, pre-consultation meetings are valuable, but only when the certainty is there. When 50% of the list is, you must do this, and then the other 50% of the list is, well, you might have to do this, but we don't know yet. And you might have to do this, but we don't know yet. And you might have to do this, but we don't know yet. Particularly in the case of small business, that lack of certainty in the 50% of items that you may have to do, but we're not sure until you go and sink $100,000 in, and maybe you might have to do the other ones. that doesn't make Ontario open for business. That doesn't make Norfolk County open for business. So that's where, you know, that process, to myself, for you going back to the ministry, where I think you guys could do a lot of good there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the suggestion. I will take that back. Mhm.
Okay. Anybody else with a question? I'm Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you've made the offer of sending us some information, and we are probably not different than most of small town Ontario, that we have a problem with our downtowns and the change in demographics, the change in society. If you had any information on different planning tools that other municipalities have used to try to stop that downturn, then I would greatly appreciate any information you could send.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor, the community improvement plan tool that I mentioned is probably the most common tool that municipalities use to look to revitalize downtown core areas, commercial areas, and that's through things like you've heard of facade improvement grants or loans to fix up storefronts and other types of community improvement plan incentives, and that's something that perhaps... Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Norfolk County does have a CIP program. Actually, all of Norfolk County is under a CIP. We don't just have certain downtowns that are designated, and you know that through some of the communications that have recently happened with the amount of money that's provided in the budget and the CIPs that are already gone for this year. There are some opportunities to look further in depth at our CIP and what they offer and how they can offer it more for our downtowns. But yes, good comments.
Okay. If I could ask Mr. Boyd a question. Question I have is, we used to have the OMB process, and now we got LPAT. Can you describe to us what the differences are between the two processes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's a good question. So the name is different, obviously, but beyond that, the new LPAT was set up specifically with a focus to streamline and sort of, maybe use the term expedite the disposition of appeals. And the way that's done primarily is that appeals filed post April 1st of 2018 have mandated timeframes then for various steps or milestones in the appeal process. So as an example, there's a defined time frame for the first, what they call case management conference to occur. And then there's a time frame for the actual hearing to occur for different types of planning applications. That didn't exist in the former OMB world. So previously under the OMB, if an appeal was made and the board would at some point schedule a pre-hearing conference, and at some point after that schedule a hearing, and the concern from both municipalities and developers was that some hearings would drag on for months and months, and in fact years, whereas now under the LPAT legislation that exists, there are these defined timeframes that exist for managing appeals. That's the primary change, and I say that because members, like members of the Ontario Municipal Board now continue on. They're the members under the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal that hear appeals, and the tribunal has brought on recently, I saw a couple more members, 2 or 3 maybe, that were appointed recently. There are some, and along with the time frames for disposing of certain aspects of the appeal process, there are new procedures as well that were developed.
Okay, so when it's called local planning, the chairman of the organization is still not local. It's just done in the local area then.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. I've heard that comment before. Some have wondered if local means it's the local municipality making the decisions then on those appeals, but it's still a provincial tribunal. It's still a provincially mandated appeal tribunal with appointees that constitute the members that hear the hearings, and you're right, the members come from across Ontario.
Okay, now it's confusing to a lot of people. They thought it was made local. Anyway, thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your knowledge and experience with respect to these planning issues. I saw another couple of hands here. Okay, Councilor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I know we have community improvement plans, things like that, and that's really cool when you want to put more lipstick on a pig and make it look pretty, but that doesn't solve the source of the problem. I'm looking more at solutions that anybody has tried, like changing the allowed uses in a downtown. Like maybe we can allow residential on ground floors in old buildings, shifting the blend of commercial with more residential, things like that. Is there any sort of history of somebody who's tried that might be options that we could do?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the example you gave, permitting residential on ground floor, what would have formerly space and perhaps was originally commercial space, is something that some municipalities have tried. There's often concern about how far to go with that because you don't want to lose the vibrancy of commercial uses, retail uses, and other uses in a downtown core by introducing a lot of residential development and then commercial development perhaps moving to fringe areas, to suburban areas. And that may be happening already. In my experience, when municipalities find their downtown cores are struggling, then it isn't uncommon to, don't want to use the term a secondary plan, to do a planning study, some type of study then, where you might go out and talk to property owners. So talk to property owners in the commercial area to find out what's working now, what isn't working, what are some of the challenges they have with attracting new tenants, what could the municipality do to assist, are there improvements in the public realm that would assist with attracting new development? Are there other types of things that the municipality could do? BIAs, and I apologize, I can't remember if Simcoe has a BIA, a downtown BIA, but BIAs are often instrumental in that work as well. And if there's a good relationship between council, the BIA, and staff, that sometimes, not always, but sometimes BIAs can be champions of revitalization efforts downtown. That's another thing, though, that I'm going to take back and think about it a little bit and see if I can dig out any case studies or other examples that might be helpful for your context here locally in Norfolk.
Okay. Was there one other question here? Councilor Michelle, did you have your hand up? If not, we'll move.
No, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, again, thanks very much for being with us for the last hour and a half. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also thank you to the planning staff for all your presentations. It's good information passed on to the council and the public. Pam, anything further?
Just that concludes our presentation. Thank you for the opportunity. I think we're fairly well on time. And again, I'd just like to thank Neil and Eric and David and Matt and Stephen and Michaela and Alicia and Shannon for presenting today. Thank you for listening today and learning today. And again, if you have any questions at any time, our doors are always open. We see you often around this council table, and we look forward to continuing development in Norfolk County.
Okay, thanks again. Okay, as was suggested by Mayor Chop, we are going to go into closed session. So I'll need a mover and a seconder to receive the planning. A mover and a seconder first to receive the planning information that we received. Councilor Rabbits and Councilor Michelle, those in favor? That's carried. And now a mover and a seconder to move into closed session as per item 10B regarding information related to the interim chief administrative officer. Councilor Rabbits and Councilor Taylor. Those in favor? Okay. And yes, I first have to read this. Pursuant to Section 239B and F of the Municipal Act 2001, RSO 2001, C25, as the subject matter relates to personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councilor Taylor, do you have something? Okay, good done. Yep. That's carried. We are going into closed session. We do not have a report from the Integrity Commissioner today. That's been withdrawn. And we'll be hearing deputations at 6 p.m. Thank you.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through, spend a day, or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North on a strip of sandy.
What I love most about Norfolk County, I think, would be the vastness of the county, how it's big and there's breathing space, and there are so many little pockets of beauty, natural beauty.
I love the seasons here. The springtime, the rain falling on the earth. I'm a farmer, so I enjoy those aspects of it, the smell of the rain. The summer times, we have beautiful, warm summers here.
You have such pristine water here. You have some of the finest cold water streams in Ontario with Big Creek and Youngs Creek and others that produce great fishing.
Norfolk is very heavily forested, beautiful color in the autumn. The sun shines very brightly here in the wintertime, so I love the 4 distinct seasons we have here in Norfolk County.
What people find remarkable about Norfolk County, I think, is that our sense of community and us working together.
I think of us as a little bit of, we have these ecospheres in our store. They're these self-sustaining little balls that, you know, completely take care of themselves. We're a little bit like that, you know, in our area. We have so much here.
My kids grow up knowing what it's like to produce a piece of fruit or produce some food, some vegetables, and put them on the table, how much effort that takes. And I think that's important.
When people come into the shop, we pull out the map and we show them the wineries and the breweries, and we tell them about the local dining in town, and we'll tell them about the lavender farm, and along the way show them produce stands that they could stop to pick up some goodies.
Everything that we want to do socially and all of our extracurricular activities are right here. And when you join groups, these people will they'll want to get to know you immediately. That's our nature. We're curious and we're supportive and we're interested.
Sometimes opportunity just kind of happens when you're talking to someone and having a conversation with someone here in Norfolk. The next thing you know, you're collaborating with them on a project or activity.
The amount of people within our community that support our business is outstanding, because it's a give and take relationship. If you support everyone else, they will support you, and it makes our community that much stronger and that much better.
You know, I think that working with the local businesses here, everyone's very welcoming. Every time I meet a new business owner, and I love to go to new stores and new restaurants that open up and introduce ourselves and welcome them to the community. It's easy to fall in love with Norfolk County.
My advice to a family that's thinking about moving here is to come and visit. Come and spend a week. Come and experience everything that we have to offer, because you're going to find an amazing quality of life.
You're 10 minutes away from a beach. You're 5 minutes away from a dog park. You know, there's so much opportunity in an area like this for young entrepreneurs, young families, even, you know, senior entrepreneurs that are doing that as well.
I'm very happy. I'm lucky, you know, very lucky I can be here, you know. It's a good place to raise family too.
We don't have this sort of slick veneer over us. We're really comfortable in our own skin, and artists are making art because they love to make art, and musicians are writing songs because they love to write songs.
And just because you're not from here doesn't mean that you can't embrace what makes Norfolk great. You know, sort of our diversity, the wonderful landscapes here.
And it's just a great area. You're going to meet great people. You're going to have a supportive environment. We can compete on an international stage with anybody. And that's how we have to start looking at the world.
You just have to be willing to work hard, realize the potential that there is here, and just, you know, put yourself to work and create that opportunity for yourself.
I found that as a young entrepreneur, I was given every opportunity I could want. Just put yourself out there. Go to local events, and you're going to bump into all kinds of people that are going to be, you know, important business connections to you.
Everybody's so willing to help somebody else out. I think that's the best thing about even being a business owner in Norfolk County.
We're a small community, but there's so much support here, whether it's a restaurant or ecotourism. We just have this appetite, and if you've got a great idea, you've got a willing community that's going to get behind your idea.
You know, some of the advice that I would give entrepreneurs coming to Norfolk County would be to think outside of the Norfolk box, but don't forget what's in the Norfolk box, because we have a lot to offer. We have a lot of great people, a lot of great opportunities.
Norfolk County.
Entrepreneurs grow here.
Norfolk County.
Ideas grow here.
Norfolk County.
You grow here.
You grow here.
You grow here.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a a tour on a peaceful country road and found to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, You'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Up north, on a strip of sandy soil, lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with a friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North on a strip of sandy soil.
What I love most about Norfolk County, I think, would be the vastness of the county, how it's big and there's breathing space and there are so many little pockets of beauty, natural beauty.
I love the seasons here. The springtime, the rain falling on the earth. I'm a farmer, so I enjoy those aspects of it, the smell of the rain. The summer times, we have beautiful warm summers here.
You have such pristine water here. You have some of the finest cold water streams in Ontario with Big Creek and Youngs Creek and others that produce great fishing.
Norfolk is very heavily forested, beautiful color in the autumn. The sun shines very brightly here in the wintertime, so I love the 4 distinct seasons we have here in Norfolk County.
What people find remarkable about Norfolk County, I think, is that our sense of community and us working together.
I think of us as a little bit of, we have these ecospheres in our store. They're these self-sustaining little balls that, completely take care of themselves. We're a little bit like that, you know, in our area. We have so much here.
My kids grow up knowing what it's like to produce a piece of fruit or produce some food, some vegetables, and put them on the table, how much effort that takes. And I think that's important.
When people come into the shop, we pull out the map and we show them the wineries and the breweries, and we tell them about the local dining in town, and we'll tell them about the lavender farm, and along the way show them produce stands that they could stop to pick up some goodies.
Everything that we want to do socially and all of our extracurricular activities are right here. And when you join groups, these people they'll want to get to know you immediately. That's our nature. We're curious and we're supportive and we're interested.
Sometimes opportunity just kind of happens when you're talking to someone and having a conversation with someone here in Norfolk. The next thing you know, you're collaborating with them on a project or activity.
The amount of people within our community that support our business is outstanding, because it's a give and take relationship. If you support everyone else, they will support you, and it makes our community that much stronger and that much better.
You know, I think that working with the local businesses here, everyone's very welcoming. Every time I meet a new business owner, and I love to go to new stores and new restaurants that open up and introduce ourselves and welcome them to the community. It's easy to fall in love with Norfolk County.
My advice to a family that's thinking about moving here is to come and visit. Come and spend a week. Come and experience everything that we have to offer, because you're going to find an amazing quality of life.
You're 10 minutes away from a beach. You're 5 minutes away from a dog park. You know, there's so much opportunity in an area like this for young entrepreneurs, young families, even, you know, senior entrepreneurs that are doing that as well.
I'm very happy. I'm lucky, very lucky I can be here, It's a good place to raise family too.
We don't have this sort of slick veneer over us. We're really comfortable in our own skin, and artists are making art because they love to make art, and musicians are writing songs because they love to write songs.
And just because you're not from here doesn't mean that you can't embrace what makes Norfolk great. Sort of our diversity, the wonderful landscapes here.
And it's just a great area. You're going to meet great people. You're going to have a supportive environment. We can compete on an international stage with anybody. And that's how we have to start looking at the world.
You just have to be willing to work hard, realize the potential that there is here, and just put yourself to work and create that opportunity for yourself.
I found that as a young entrepreneur, I was given every opportunity I could want. Just put yourself out there. Go to local events, and you're going to bump into all kinds of people that are going to be, important business connections to you.
Everybody's so willing to help somebody else out. I think that's the best thing about even being a business owner in Norfolk County.
We're a small community, but there's so much support here, whether it's a restaurant or ecotourism. We just have this appetite, and if you've got a great idea, you've got a willing community that's going to get behind your idea.
Some of the advice that I would give entrepreneurs coming to Norfolk County would be to think outside of the Norfolk box, but don't forget what's in the Norfolk box, because we have a lot to offer. We have a lot of great people, a lot of great opportunities.
Norfolk County.
Entrepreneurs grow here.
Norfolk County.
Ideas grow here.
Norfolk County.
You grow here.
You grow here.
You grow here.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home.
Okay, we will reconvene here. Just to report from the closed session, there was a report presented in camera, and I need a mover and a seconder for this one. We now need a mover and a seconder to adjourn closed session at 5:26 p.m. and reconvene in open session. Mover and a seconder, Rabbits and Michele. Got that, Madam Clerk? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We are now breaking, and we'll be back in the council chambers at 6 p.m. to hear deputations.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, You'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North on a strip of
What I love most about Norfolk County, I think, would be the vastness of the county, how it's big and there's breathing space and there are so many little pockets of beauty, natural beauty.
I love the seasons here. The springtime, the rain falling on the earth. I'm a farmer, so I enjoy those aspects of it, the smell of the rain. The summer times, we have beautiful warm summers here.
You have such pristine water here. You have some of the finest cold water streams in Ontario with Big Creek and Youngs Creek and others that produce great fishing.
Norfolk is very heavily forested, beautiful color in the autumn. The sun shines very brightly here in the wintertime, so I love the 4 distinct seasons we have here in Norfolk County.
What people find remarkable about Norfolk County, I think, is that our sense of community and us working together.
I think of us as a little bit of, we have these ecospheres in our store. They're these self-sustaining little balls that, completely take care of themselves. We're a little bit like that, in our area. We have so much here.
My kids grow up knowing what it's like to produce a piece of fruit or produce some food, some vegetables, and put them on the table, how much effort that takes. And I think that's important.
When people come into the shop, we pull out the map and we show them the wineries and the breweries, and we tell them about the local dining in town, and we'll tell them about the lavender farm, and along the way show them produce stands that they could stop to pick up some goodies.
Everything that we want to do socially and all of our extracurricular activities are right here. And when you join groups, these people they'll want to get to know you immediately. That's our nature. We're curious and we're supportive and we're interested.
Sometimes opportunity just kind of happens when you're talking to someone and having a conversation with someone here in Norfolk. The next thing you know, you're collaborating with them on a project or activity.
The amount of people within our community that support our business is outstanding, because it's a give and take relationship. If you support everyone else, they will support you, and it makes our community that much stronger and that much better.
I think that working with the local businesses here, everyone's very welcoming. Every time I meet a new business owner, and I love to go to new stores and new restaurants that open up and introduce ourselves and welcome them to the community. It's easy to fall in love with Norfolk County.
My advice to a family that's thinking about moving here is to come and visit. Come and spend a week. Come and experience everything that we have to offer, because you're going to find an amazing quality of life.
You're 10 minutes away from a beach. You're 5 minutes away from a dog park. There's so much opportunity in an area like this for young entrepreneurs, young families, even, senior entrepreneurs that are doing that as well.
I'm very happy. I'm lucky, very lucky I can be here, It's a good place to raise family too.
We don't have this sort of slick veneer over us. We're really comfortable in our own skin, and artists are making art because they love to make art, and musicians are writing songs because they love to write songs.
And just because you're not from here doesn't mean that you can't embrace what makes Norfolk great. Sort of our diversity, the wonderful landscapes here.
And it's just a great area. You're going to meet great people. You're going to have a supportive environment. We can compete on an international stage with anybody. And that's how we have to start looking at the world.
You just have to be willing to work hard, realize the potential that there is here, and just put yourself to work and create that opportunity for yourself.
I found that as a young entrepreneur, I was given every opportunity I could want. Just put yourself out there. Go to local events, and you're going to bump into all kinds of people that are going to be, important business connections to you.
Everybody's so willing to help somebody else out. I think that's the best thing about even being a business owner in Norfolk County.
We're a small community, but there's so much support here, whether it's a restaurant or ecotourism. We just have this appetite, and if you've got a great idea, you've got a willing community that's going to get behind your idea.
Some of the advice that I would give entrepreneurs coming to Norfolk County would be to think outside of the Norfolk box, but don't forget what's in the Norfolk box, because we have a lot to offer. We have a lot of great people, a lot of great opportunities.
Norfolk County.
Entrepreneurs grow here.
Norfolk County.
Ideas grow here.
Norfolk County.
You grow here.
You grow here.
You grow here.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more of North. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger alone. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Is it gonna be on the screen? Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more.
Okay, we will now reconvene the council meeting that started at 3 o'clock today. And I will now call, we're moving to the deputation stage. We do have several deputations of various types to hear this evening. And I will first invite Ms. Carrie Sinkowski to the podium to speak to your deputation. Carrie? And I just want to remind you that you have 10 minutes, and at the 9-minute mark, I will remind you there's 1 minute left, okay? And who's your friend with you? Okay, if you can, I'll get the clerk to note that. Okay, go ahead.
All right, good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. Brittany and I are both members of the Poverty Action Partnership of Haldeman Norfolk, PAP-HN, and we came here to share with you the work that we've been doing over the last few years, and we hope that you maybe will join us in some of that work that we're doing across both counties. So, yes.
So who are we? We are a community-based committee. We are composed of community members in Haldeman and Norfolk from different agencies, including the Community Legal Clinic, United Way, the Health Unit, Social Services, the Norfolk Community Help Center, Service Canada, and also a number of individuals who've chosen to join our committee.
All right, so what we do is we meet monthly, and we have 1 month in Simcoe and the next month in Caledonia. At these meetings, we network, we talk about trends that we're witnessing in our respective organizations and trends that we're seeing in the community in terms of poverty-related issues. We also organize an annual workshop on various issues. Last year, the workshop was on working with Indigenous populations and trying to become better allies as settler-based agencies. And we also did one on truth and reconciliation. We created an information package in the fall, which we shared with almost every church in Haldeman and Norfolk County on how to create a sermon that was focused on poverty. And many churches use that either in their Sunday school classes or in their sermon. And we participate in provincial and national anti-poverty activities.
So one thing that we want to talk about today is poverty a big or small issue? If you look at the statistics, Norfolk is under the low income measure for Ontario. But if you go look at the town center specifically, they tell a different story. Specifically in Delhi and Simcoe, both of those town centers are above the average low income level in Haldeman and Norfolk. So one of the things about poverty is that it doesn't necessarily look the way that people in our community expect poverty to look. So I want to talk to you about one example of poverty. And something that I hear a lot is when people see others who are living in poverty and they'll see them with a Tim Hortons cup, which is an essential Canadian thing that you see a lot, especially at this time of year when it's roll up the rim to win. I've heard people look at them and say, oh, they must not be doing that bad if they can afford Tim Hortons, or maybe if they stopped going out, they'd be able to afford more. Now, we have someone who's on our committee who works with clients in the community who are living in poverty. And they had one client who has a Tim Hortons cup, and they use this cup for weeks on end, rinsing it out, cleaning it, and reusing it. And the reason that they do that is because it's the one thing that they can do that helps them feel like everyone else, to make them feel like they belong. Just that simple act of getting a Tim Hortons cup that we think nothing of because we're fortunate, that makes a really big difference to them. Another example of what people tend to think poverty looks like is homeless people sleeping on subway grates. Well, as you know, we don't have any subway grates in Haldeman and Norfolk counties, so you're not going to see that here. But we can assure you that there is a lot of homelessness in our community, and Carrie's going to tell you a bit about that.
So I work for the Community Legal Clinic of Brant, Haldeman, and Norfolk, and we have clients who experience various levels of homelessness, and it's not anything that you would see walking about day to day. A lot of couch surfing, sleeping in barns, sleeping in old kilns, sleeping in the rough, which means like sleeping outside on trails and in the woods. So we're hearing more and more of that, and I believe the report last year on homelessness that staff produced demonstrates that we do experience homelessness here in Haldeman, Norfolk. It's just that it's not visible. So you hear a lot of people, at least in our client base, where they're sleeping in hotels or sharing hotel rooms. A lot of overcapacity, like in terms of apartments and sleeping on floors, but it is existing. It's just that we're not always seeing it. So it's just something that we try to keep in our mind, that even though it's not visible, it's still an experience that far too many people in our area are experiencing.
So we want to talk to you a little bit today about what can council do to help with reducing poverty in Norfolk County. The first thing we want to talk about is assigning a member to the committee. Previously, we had Peter Black, who was the assigned member for one term, and we would ask the council to please assign a new committee member so they can continue on with our work.
Another thing, and I'm sure that you're already engaging in this, is considering how experiencing poverty would impact your ability to engage in county activities. So when new services are being developed or existing services are being expanded, whether it's Parks and Rec or other community events or council committees that citizens can participate in, how can we make them more accessible considering transportation or whether or not food's provided or what's the cost or is there a sliding scale? Just trying to consider those things or where new housing's placed or if bylaws are created around housing, what's affordable, and just thinking about that even though we are below the provincial poverty line, that there's significant parts of Norfolk County that are not, that they're way above what the rest of Ontario is experiencing.
We'd also ask you to continue to support and develop Ride Norfolk. Accessible transportation is so important, especially in a rural community. If you don't have your own car and you live out in the countryside, you don't have access to accessible transportation. So we really appreciate the work that Ride Norfolk is doing, and we ask you to continue expanding on that to help more people.
So this brings us to our last point, which is support us with staff and resources for our next step. So we met all day today, or all afternoon today. We're going to try and create a community plan to address issues of poverty in both Haldimand and Norfolk counties. We want to engage the community over a one-year period through focus groups and events to determine what priorities are and identify needs, and also to build on strengths that we currently have, so do community asset mapping, so we know what we have and what we can build on, but also what we could maybe do better or expand or, I don't know, maybe spread out geographically. There's so many pieces that we're not sure what will come up, but we're hoping that you can support our work in that. We want to develop calls to action. So anyone who's familiar with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they develop calls of action. So when in 1996, when they did the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, they developed these recommendations and nothing really happened with them. They just sat on a shelf. But when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission happened, they created calls to action instead for specific sectors. So now you can look at the calls to action and say, this is the one that's specific to my sector and we need to do better for the Indigenous communities that we're serving. But we want to do the same thing with this poverty action plan, is have calls to action that would be sector specific. So the city of Edmonton, has already developed an extensive community action plan regarding poverty reduction, and they developed it with 35 calls to action. So we just have a few here as an example.
So one of the items that they have as a call to action is encouraging local businesses to provide workers with a living wage. So different than the minimum wage, a living wage is the minimum amount someone would need to earn in the community to meet all of their basic needs, their bills, and allow them to still participate in the community. And actually in Haldimand and Norfolk right now, United Way is working on calculating the living wage for our local community.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay. We want to, another action in Edmonton was they produced participation toolkits that enabled different groups to engage and empower them to action. And Action 28 was they developed a tool with they asked the city to develop a tool with a poverty lens to inform decision making at the city level.
So those are a few of the items that we are hoping to be able to incorporate in our action plan so that we can figure out exactly what Haldimand and Norfolk needs and bring together different sectors so that we can help reduce poverty in our community. In summary, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to us today, and I ask that you especially assign a council member to our Poverty Action Partnership so that we can continue the work on reducing poverty in Haldimand and Norfolk. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right on the 10-minute mark. Great. Your slides there, do you have a copy for the clerk's department?
And you can have this one?
Or, okay, that'd be great then, if you could. And we'll move on to questions from council. Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to Carrie. I wanted to know what the meeting times and dates are for the committee. I think that would be helpful in determining if we have any interest in serving and who might have availability in their schedule for those meetings.
So we meet the second Wednesday of the month from 1:30 until 3:30.
I'll also mention we alternate meetings between Simcoe and Caledonia.
And are you looking for a counselor from Haldeman as well?
We already have a member from Haldeman. It's Tony Delamonte.
Okay, thanks. Further questions to the deputation? Okay. Counselor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Columbus, and through you to the deputation. You said the United Way is calculating the living wage for, is that for Norfolk or for Haldeman Norfolk, sorry?
It's for both Haldeman and Norfolk combined.
Thank you. And are there other agencies that work at calculating living wages? Is a number like that out there right now, or is it United Way is going to be the first one that's done the calculation for the area?
To our knowledge, United Way will be the first one doing it for Norfolk County.
Thank you. One other question here. I just need to see where I wrote it down. Oh, at the beginning, there are non-agency members, right? Just members of the community? Okay. There are a lot of agencies getting listed, and I may have missed that. Thank you.
Further questions to the deputation? You did mention that you would like some staff support. Was that what I heard?
In the future, we will likely come back with another deputation asking for specific support. And now we're simply asking for the member to be assigned to the committee.
Okay. And are you communicating with the Health and Social Services Department?
There are members on the committee that are from the Health and Social Services Department.
Okay. At this time, is there any committee member who wishes to put a motion on the floor to appoint a representative to this organization? Or shall we wait for when Councillor Huffman gets back? Maybe we think about it. Councillor Taylor, do you have something to add?
I think it'd just be best to wait. I mean, we just got the times and dates. Just allow us to check our schedules amongst ourselves and see what we can work out.
What were the times and dates again?
The second Wednesday of the month from 1:30 till 3:30. And we meet at Class, Community Living on Culver Street. And the next month we meet in Caledonia at St. Paul's.
Okay. Good. So, yes, Mayor Chop.
Maybe we could get the deputy clerk to add that to the agenda for next week.
Okay, do that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I would just like to make a comment of support, and although this meeting date and time and infrequent locations will be very difficult with my work schedule, if no other council member steps up, I would make a very good effort to be there and support you. Thank you.
Okay, with no further questions, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the deputation? Mayor Chop, and seconded by Councillor Taylor, that we receive the deputation of Carrie Sinkowski and Brittany
Burley.
Burley. Got that, Madam Clerk? Okay. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your attendance, and good luck with that program. The second deputation is that from Michelle Rashenko. If you could come to the podium, and it's with respect to affordable housing. Pardon me? On this one? Okay. Yeah, you could have, but you should have interrupted me then, okay? Okay, Ms. Rashenko, you've got 10 minutes. I'll let you know, and you have 1 minute left, okay? Go.
Hi, my name is Michelle Rashenko. Some of you may remember me from the past when you're running. The reason I'm here tonight, I'm asking for your help. Not only me, but there are many, many, many others that are in serious trouble. They are looking for places that cannot be found. They've been looking like I have, and it's, come to odds. And, so I'm not only asking, but I'm asking for, trying to help others you know. So what I guess what I'm asking is, we need affordable housing. You know, it's like, if we don't get it, you know, it's either that or the only other thing that they'll have is an emergency bed where they'll have to stay there until they can find something. I know I've been looking since January, and you're looking at anywhere between $700 to $1,000 for rent. So it's like, you know, it's endless. So I'm asking for some help.
Okay, you ready for questions? Okay, questions to Ms. Rashenko. Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through the chair to Michelle, thank you for coming forward today and reminding us about affordable housing and the need for it in Norfolk County. My question to you, Michelle, is what organizations have you found that are helpful in Norfolk County? Is there any in particular that are currently engaged with you that you find are bearing some fruit or helping you with your search?
What I did, I've been going since January. The last thing I did was put in an application for, what's that place, Lingwood? And I've already had my assessment, and they've told me 2 years. So, you know, it's endless. Like, if you look in Simcoe, there's nothing. You go out of Simcoe, there's nothing. You know, and people need help, and if they don't get it, the only stop you're going to have is Lingwood in an emergency bed. That's all you're going to have.
Further questions to the deputation, Councillor Michelle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, thank you for your presentation. I don't think this problem is a stranger to council. We have heard very recently of what I think is actually a real crisis in this county.
It is.
And I know that all the people involved in this are kind of doing what they think they can to solve that problem. Do you have any ideas, or has someone mentioned anything to you that you think might be something that council could consider to maybe be at least a temporary solution to this?
The only thing that I have really come up with is affordable housing. If we don't have something, you know, it's either that or someone talk to all landlords and have prices dropped. Like, you know, there are people out there like me that say they look at $700. Some landlords are wanting $700 first, $700 last, and then not only that, but they're saying, okay, we want hydro on top of that, you know? And, I mean, the prices go up, and then you wonder, you know, that's why it's in the best. If we have something built so that people can survive, you know, have a place, you know, but if we don't, then I don't know. I mean, the other suggestion is talking to all landlords, but I know that landlords aren't going to change their mind. So.
Further questions? Councillor Rabitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question now through you to staff, and likely I'm going to be referring to Marlene here. You know, in response to Michelle's deputation this evening, what sorts of resources are available to those that may either not be aware of them, if there's any new that are coming online in the near future. I was just hoping to provide you with an opportunity to have a chance to do some very public networking and perhaps highlight some of those organizations that could be of benefit to someone that is in Michelle's situation.
Yeah. So through the chair to Councillor Rabbits, thank you for the question and thank you for the deputation this evening. Through our housing department, if anyone wishes to call them, they will work with each and every individual to try to find affordable housing through housing allowances or different opportunities that are available. Worst case scenario, unfortunately, is in accessing our emergency housing program. She's absolutely right. The affordable housing is definitely challenging. We do offer housing allowances to help with the current private market rent and to make it more affordable, but definitely there's just not enough housing in Haldimand, Norfolk, and more broadly than that. There is going to be lots of conversation about housing in the next few weeks with the provincial budgets coming on April the 18th. Ms. Van Dyke and I have been participating in some of those sessions. Haven't had a whole lot of information other than we know things are coming, so we're optimistic that those will bring some further budgets and some further funds to assist with this crisis that our nation is facing currently right now with the market rent. So those are the kind of things. So we would encourage anyone to reach out to our office, and we will work with them to find some form of either temporary, transitional, or permanent housing to work with each of them.
Okay, Mayor Chop.
And the one thing I want you to know is, yes, I did find something at the last minute. If it wasn't for that, that's where I would be, is in a one-bed emergency until I could find something. So I was just one of the lucky ones. So.
Mayor Chop.
Through you, Mr. Chair, acts of deputation, thank you for coming tonight, Michelle. You did a great job.
Thank you.
I guess this is kind of more of a question to councillors. It's not going to solve your problem or everybody else's problem right now, but when are we getting the affordable tiny house village going? You know, I think there's something to look into in that, certainly in Norfolk, as it's a solution that's popping up in other areas. Why not consider it here?
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, we hear stories about the problems all the time. And I remember right from the line items in the budget, Haldimand, Norfolk, we're spending over $9 million on housing services for the needs of the people already. And if it's not working, it is time to start looking at different ways of doing things to make that money stretch farther, because you know, we can just throw money at it, but that doesn't make it go away. We got to find different solutions, and I'm sure staff are learning a lot about the new things. I appreciate the work that they do already, but it's already $9 million a year.
Thank you for that. Anything further, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have to agree with Mayor Chop's comments. There is a movement happening across Ontario, across Canada, where tiny homes are being brought into municipalities, and not just tiny homes, creative housing arrangements through sea storage containers. And if that sounds bizarre to anyone, I encourage you to research it. They are beautiful and quite unique. And it allows for people to find housing options, and we're not just talking about individuals who are vulnerable and that need to find housing. This relates to someone coming out of a university or college program and they're not able to purchase their first home. This applies to, you know, my parents who would love to downsize in Norfolk County but wouldn't be able to afford to downsize from their home to something smaller. So I really think it's time, especially with this change mandate we've all been elected on, to investigate other housing solutions here in Norfolk County and creative ones that are environmentally friendly and going to help people in our community. So I don't know if this is an appropriate time to maybe look to our staff for some information to come to council on something like this.
Ms. Dilding, do you have any comment on a proposal of that nature?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin, absolutely, we can look into it. Our planning staff have done a little bit of research. It's not something that I think we can do tomorrow, but we can definitely look into it for the future and bring an information report back to council if it's so their desire.
Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might just ask that this get added to our action list or to an agenda as an agenda item for the near future, and I would welcome any type of report from planning staff in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are no further questions then. Mr. Schenkel, thank you for coming forward and representing all those persons who need affordable housing in the county of Norfolk. And makes you wonder sometimes, there's a lot of 3-bedroom homes where there's one person living, and yet other people don't have even a bedroom to stay in. So it's quite an inequity, but it's the real thing that's happening out there. So, okay. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the deputation, Mayor Chop and Councillor Taylor, that we receive the deputation of Michelle Rashenko. Those in favor? That is carried too. Thank you. And now we'll move on to a deputation from Mr. Ian Thompson, and it's with respect to Homer Street sidewalks. Mr. Thompson, there's the podium, and you have 10 minutes, sir. I'll notify you at the 1 minute left mark.
Thanks, Amy. My name's Ian Thompson, and I live on Homer Street, and that's the subject of the deck I gave you a bit earlier, or we distributed. And I'd like to mention that our whole street is here, and I think I got picked because I'm the oldest guy in the street. So anyway, you're stuck with me. Historically, about page 3 and page 4, if it gets confusing, there's an out-of-date map, and it's there for a reason, and a picture of our street. So if I am referring to things, it may help just to stay on those 2 pages to keep things clear. Historically, we had tried to eliminate the sidewalks on Homer Street. In our community, we're a street of 6 houses, but I think if you look at the blueprint or the schematic picture of our 6 yellow houses there, you'll see we have proposed sidewalks, which is the orange, and that's our proposal, not the region's, and the green is existing. So we are already, there's a lot of connectivity in our neighborhood. There's a lot of, there's no safety issues. There's no cars on our street. It is only 6 houses after all. And the other areas in the area, sorry to repeat myself, and I mentioned them, there's about 5 or 6 cul-de-sacs that have 9 and 10 homes and no sidewalks. And the reason we're mentioning this, of course, is because we all have landscaping plans and expenses in those. We don't feel there's a need. There's a definite length of driveway issue for some of us. Some of us have children and 3 or 4 cars in the driveway already. Aesthetically, it doesn't make sense to have it there when nobody's going to use the sidewalk. And if we do put the sidewalk in front of our houses, if you look at the picture and the schematic, you'll see that the sidewalk in front of the houses with the red car that you see there, they do not line up with the existing structure. So there's no connectivity to speak of. So we're saying we historically didn't want the sidewalks, but if council feels that that's a mistake or we should have sidewalks, we're saying it probably makes more sense to put them on the other side of the road where they connect up with the existing structures. Also, they'd be under the street lights. You can see there's 2 street lights would be right over top of them. And if you go 1 page earlier to the schematic, you're saying, well, what is on the other side of the road probably? You can see there's 3 backyards, 1 minor affected and 2 a bit more, but that's a right-of-way, we believe, and would not affect those houses. I guess the one thing that would happen is if we did move out, who's going to clean the snow? We've all committed to moving the snow, removing the snow, if we did put it across the street. But we do have great snow removal in our area. It's timely, and there is a machine that goes around and does some of the sidewalks. And we're thinking that if there is already snow removal, it may not be an issue in the future if some of us that have agreed to do the cleanup are not there. So I don't think this one will take 10 minutes, so hopefully that's a positive. The only other thing I can think of is that if we can go back and revisit the removal of the sidewalks, if you go over in the areas, and I'm sure you've heard from these people in Inglewood area or the Forestwood area, they don't have sidewalks. So as far as carbon footprint and a waste of cement, we could do that, or we could move it over there, and I don't know how we do that, but those people need sidewalks, and they need sidewalks along Cockshot. So I guess to sum up, it didn't make a lot of sense to us when we were told that there would sidewalks would be put in, and initially we wanted them removed. But if that is not acceptable, then we think it makes more sense, looking at it, that we locate the sidewalks across the road. Now, if you look at the schematic, if you're wondering, well, why would somebody put sidewalks in there in the original plan? If you look at the schematic, I have a feeling, and Dave Hoover, who worked with the former councilors, thinks that Homer Street may have, at one time, been going right through and around to Cockshot. Because right now, our street ends at that last yellow house. There is no street beyond that orange line. So that's what we think. That's why we think there's sidewalks proposed for an area of 6 houses.
Okay, ready for questions? Questions to the deputation? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did just want to clarify that for the rest of council and staff who may not be familiar with your street. To the right of the 6 homes, it looks as though there are 3 properties there. However, there aren't. This is a dead-end street. You're on a little bit of a dead-end road there. And when we had our initial conversation, I just wanted to commend you for bringing forth a proposal that has a compromise. I know that the neighbors were not interested in having a sidewalk in the area, so I just wanted to thank you for bringing forth a solution when you come here. That's most appreciated by council. If I may pose a question, I will wait for questions to be finished, and then I would like to ask a question of staff.
Okay, further questions? Councilor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to ask the deputation that September 4th, 2018, you presented the petition that you don't want the sidewalks. Now it's April.
I'm sorry, it was never presented formally. It made it to our elected rep, and it was David worked with them, and it just didn't go anywhere. It died on the vine, so we never did make it to this.
So technically, this does not exist.
Bingo.
Further. Mayor Chow.
I'm sorry, you got me kind of confused, actually. So the proposed is the proposed from the county. Proposed is the proposed from the county. The proposed is proposed from you guys.
I'm not clear on
Just straight
your
from you guys that you want, okay.
It's from us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I appreciate you guys certainly coming forward, and the more people that come and kind of voice their concerns, the better. The one challenge I have, I guess, with this and kind of wrapping my head around is in terms of, asking the county to go and to move a sidewalk when we have people out there coming to do deputations that are desperate for a sidewalk. And,
That's my point, that you should move it and or not do it. And whatever refund you get back from the builder, which you would, I would invest it over where you need it. You don't need a sidewalk for 6 houses. That's never used. You could do study, I'd bet there wouldn't be 2 people walking up that street, up until about noon. There's no traffic on that street. And if we do put the sidewalks where they're proposed, they don't line up with the existing sidewalk system. So what we're saying is, historically, that was my point, is we tried the removal of sidewalks, which makes no sense to any of us, and then you can reinvest that money, because you will get it back from the contractor, hopefully. I think you would, because he hasn't paid it out yet. The sidewalks are not installed.
Not as far as I'm aware, no. That's a requirement for them to, if they don't put it in, they don't invest the money there, and we don't get anything back from it.
Well, I don't know how that would work. Excuse me, but
Is that
it doesn't make sense.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
We'll
to
ask that question of Mr. Baird in a bit here.
I think George and Betty Egink, who are our builders, as you can see, Betty Egink, who's principal in the company, has agreed with us and signed the petition. And that is because they don't want the sidewalks either. And my guess is that there'd be monies held back. I mean, in my construction background, those holdbacks, he wants them back. Sorry, I guess my time's up. And to get that money back, maybe a condition is, well, we need a refund for the sidewalk in front of 6 houses. Claim that money back and use it for cockshot for the people who really need it, that are coming from those 2 areas just north of us. I mean, there's already sidewalks throughout our neighborhood. There's already sidewalks everywhere needed. The cul-de-sacs, which have more houses, don't have sidewalks. So why are we being penalized? So I think you can get that money back.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Baird, is that something that's ever been done where we've created a clause that, because my understanding in the past with the sidewalks is that's where we've run into trouble when we've waived the sidewalks and now, the builder's no longer committed to doing that, and then a few years down the road, the makeup of constituents changes in the houses, and the previous ones didn't want sidewalks, but the next ones do want sidewalks. But has there ever been a situation where, I don't think in Norfolk County, but it would be interesting actually to potentially look at a clause that says, especially if the builder was in agreement and the residents didn't want it and he wants to help the residents that he just built the houses for, of saying, well, fine, we'll take the cash in lieu and put that into a sidewalk fund.
Through the chair, you took the words right out of my mouth, absolutely, Mayor Chop. You can't emphasize enough, this makes perfect sense, it really does. So we appreciate you coming forward and sharing this with us. The bigger picture really is the walkability of a community, and sidewalks are not necessarily there to serve those that immediately abut, but for pedestrians and neighbors to be able to walk safely through the neighborhood. This is unique because there is a dead end, and the topography, the ravine there, it's highly unlikely that Homer Street would ever extend eastward.
That is true.
Yeah. So we understand that. It does make sense from a continuity perspective. The challenge we have with that site is the grade. You mentioned there are streetlights there. There's some hydro or utility kiosks that would have to be relocated and removed. There may be some legal piece, but in previous years, there was simply a decision made, we don't want sidewalks, so the developer got off the hook and they didn't have to pay $100 a step to put them in. In this particular case, as the mayor had mentioned, we have collected those funds from the developer, and they sit in I'll use the small R reserve for that purpose, for their construction. And I would suggest that if I could, a recommendation for council is that the sidewalks not be constructed either on the north or south side, but we do an informational report to see the feasibility of doing that, but we have collected the funds, and I think that's the right thing to do for a developer. The county should not be asking for money for sidewalks if we have no intention of putting them in. But even if we hold that, and as the mayor has suggested, future generation that will be living in your home may be seeking that, and at least that way we've got money in the bank to help offset those costs. So just a few thoughts.
Well, kind of. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, though, right? So it would make more sense when we do have areas that need, I wouldn't support it unless we were collecting the money from the developer. I wouldn't support waiving sidewalks anywhere anymore just because of the troubles that we find ourselves in later on. Unless in this unique circumstance where clearly there doesn't seem to be a need. So if the developer was amenable to providing the money to Norfolk County, I don't think we should hold it in perpetuity to potentially build a sidewalk there 50 years from now. That doesn't make sense. It probably wouldn't even be able to cover the cost of it. So it would make more sense to put it into building the sidewalk, as an example, on Cockshut Road or somewhere else, taking on a project that we weren't otherwise, and I'm not saying we're not taking on the Cockshut Road project, but taking on a project that we weren't otherwise going to take on.
So, Mr. Baird, are we saying that the recommendation could read that we waive the requirement for a sidewalk on Homer Street?
What I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that the sidewalk not be constructed at the present time, pending further review. And I think we should be looking at something like the mayor has suggested, like a cash in lieu of parkland. There may be sections where we would want a developer to contribute towards a sidewalk network, but we could use those funds for more connectivity and more options. But at this point, we wouldn't put it on the south or the north side, pending just coming back to say, here's a couple of options that council consider going forward.
Here, Chop.
So if I was a developer and I heard this conversation, I would say, okay, well, they're going to waive the sidewalk, but they're still undecided what the cash in lieu component looks like, but we're going to have a motion at council not to build a sidewalk. It's kind of not really a good position to be in, right? Because then I would say, well, you already said we're not going to construct the sidewalk, so why would I give you any money? To me, I think that the point needs to be we need to determine what that cash in lieu looks like, and if the developer supports us taking the cash in lieu, then we take the cash in lieu and we don't move forward with the sidewalk. But I think to say we're not going to build the sidewalk without working those other pieces would be premature in a bargaining process.
Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to Chris, my thoughts are if the intention of the money is to improve the walkability of the neighborhood, there are other options to promote public safety and walkability that aren't necessarily sidewalks. We could very well use those funds to maintain the light fixtures that are across the street and other regular maintenance, including servicing the road for those that are using other methods of transportation other than their 2 feet. Perhaps people are biking to this area. I'm not too sure what the traffic is like, but in terms of promoting safety in that corner, we could even be talking about signage. There are a number of different avenues to promote walkability and increase public safety that those funds could be utilized for. I realize that we've taken money with the intention of building a sidewalk, but would there be an option potentially of repurposing those funds for just that purpose, promoting public safety and walkability, or is that something that's in conflict? I see that Pam is raising her hand, and I would like a response. I'm trying to find a third alternative to what seems to be, a problem that, really we'll probably have to give this money back at this point, but if there's any other way we could utilize those funds, I think they should be explored at least.
Now, the other, as a lot of you know, George is completing another phase right now in which the sidewalks are not in. And I'm sure there may be some room there for dispersals of monies that maybe the sidewalk isn't collected in the new area maybe, or it is collected, whichever way you want to go. But what I'm getting at is he's still working in other phases that you can get your money back from.
Good, we're waiting for Ms. Disley.
Yeah, thank you through the chair to council. Very good questions and brainstorming ideas. Unfortunately, for this specific subdivision development, it's not draft plan approved, it is registered. Which means it's been registered since 2016, which means there are no conditions at this time to amend. So I would feel more comfortable from a land use planning perspective if we got some information from our county solicitor and returned back to council with the options.
Okay, I think we'll probably be looking for a report from our staff on this. Okay, any further questions to the deputation?
Yeah, I mean, this is minor compared to the people before us. I feel guilty almost talking about it, but we all have, we've all been in our houses 2 years, and we all have landscapers that we've signed on with, and there's plans, and if we could somehow get an inkling of which way it's going, that would help us in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may take your seat then, and Mayor Chop, did you have something?
Well, I guess just one comment to Councillor Rabbits. The challenge is, and we've kind of had this conversation as a group before, is we've seen where we have not put sidewalks in. So if the money was to go to a different fund, where it's kind of come back to bite us. And I understand what you're saying. We'll use it in some other capacity in the neighborhood. But at the same time, I feel that there's also kind of a commitment that we have to make that, you know, either we're sticking with the sidewalks regardless of how many, you know, complaints come or petitions come out of it, because of the potential for it to bite council later on when a new group comes in and says they want it. So that's the only reason I see it, as ensuring that at least sidewalks are going in somewhere with the money. That's just kind of.
Councillor Rabbits?
Thank you, and through the chair, if I may respond, I think we are on the same page, and perhaps Mayor Chop, we're just arguing semantics at this point, but I do appreciate your comments regarding, you know, $1 today for sidewalks is going to be like $1.50 tomorrow, and we can't hold these funds in perpetuity. It does not make sense. And if we can possibly use this sidewalk small reserve fund, small R, for other projects, that is worth exploring as well. I just think that, you know, it's not fair to the developer or for future developments to take money for a project and not use those funds for that specific purpose. So I know that staff are listening to our comments, and likely this is what's going to come back in that report. We can have further deliberations at that point in time, but I just have some problem trying to wrap my head around how, you know, we're taking money for a specific purpose and not using those funds for that purpose that we've agreed to.
I see the mayor wants
If
a
I
rebuttal.
could, just one more rebuttal on that. The challenge with that is then you get into this every time we have a development, and so people come forward and they say, well, we don't want sidewalks, we want better lighting. We don't want sidewalks, you know, we want a community garden, or, you know, where does it end then? Because then you would say, well, you took money in this development away from the sidewalks, and you agree that you would put it further back into the development. Whereas in this case, they're saying, okay, they're willing to forego the sidewalk component, but let's ensure that it still gets used for that same purpose, so we don't get into this gray area where people try to reallocate money for different purposes within housing development.
I'm moving over to Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I wonder if to council, I wonder if we can put a date on some type of report from our
Sure, I'm going to ask the deputy clerk here to read a recommendation.
Perfect.
That she's got ready.
Through the chair, that the deputation of Ian Thompson respecting Homer Street sidewalks be received as information, and that staff be directed to investigate options respecting the deputation and report back to council. And then if you want to insert a date.
Okay, which date would you like, Councillor Martin?
May, was it the 2nd?
Through the chair, the next CIC meeting is, well, there's April 16th, and then there is one May 7th. But with the time, we are publishing a week in advance now. So I'm just not sure. I would turn to staff to see if that's feasible.
Nicholas is off on holiday.
I suggested that date as per Nicholas's comments earlier this afternoon.
What's the date, man?
I look to Stephanie on the date of this first CIC in May.
Yeah, through the chair, the first CIC meeting in May is May 7th, and the next is May 21st as CIC. So
May the 7th, the first possible date. We can reply back to the neighbors with regards to their landscaping concerns.
Okay.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that? Staff? Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, that report would have to have been authored already in order to meet that timeline. We need to have a wholesome discussion with our solicitor to see what we can do, what sort of options are available. We'll communicate with some of our other municipal peers. I recognize the promptness that Councillor Martin is seeking, but we really do need a bit more time to develop that. We're incredibly swamped right now. If it could be before the summer break, we're certainly not going to be proceeding with the sidewalk in either location until we bring information back. Council can make a final decision.
I know normally sidewalks are not poured till late summer, usually. Mayor Chop.
Well, just further to Deputy Mayor Martin's point, I think that the residents want to know, and I don't necessarily think that it needs to be a big formal report. I think it would just be a phone call with the developer, number one, to see if that's even something that they would be amenable to, on a phone call between them and Nicholas and possibly myself. And if they are, whether or not Nicholas can draft some type of agreement that would meet that standard. I don't know that we're expecting a full-blown report.
So what date do we wish? It sounds like May 7th is too early.
How about a verbal update, no staff report at the first CIC
On May
meeting?
7th?
Provided we can get a hold of the developer in time.
Okay. Can you add the verbal update provided on the May 7th committee meeting? Okay. Does everybody understand the recommendation? Okay, we'll call the vote then. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Martin and Councillor Geisens. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we'll look forward to that. We're moving on it. Might be slower than what you think, but it's probably time well spent coming to this meeting. Thanks. Next we have Mr. Ron Sadler. He will do us a deputation respecting property taxes in Norfolk County. Welcome, Mr. Sadler. You have 10 minutes. You've been at the podium before. I will give you a 1-minute warning when you have 1 minute left, okay? Go ahead. Is your microphone on, sir?
Okay. Which have no merit and no use is exactly what's wrong with this county and the province. It's overspending on infrastructure which has no merit. Going back a couple years, my shop is on Argyle Avenue. The proposal was for sidewalk on Argyle Avenue. We did a study. We got the 50 houses together, signed a petition. We don't want sidewalk. We did a traffic count. There's hardly anybody walking on the street. There was no reason to spend the money to lose the 40 trees that were going to be cut down. Now we got it through council and they agreed. No sidewalk. Argyle is a very long street, but the traffic doesn't warrant it. There's no need for a sidewalk. We saved that county here $300,000. That's $300,000 that could help put a bed under that woman. You're not the only ones that are creating this issue, but we're here and we should start looking